There are moments in life when a single conversation, a single thought, or a single decision changes everything. Imagine standing at a crossroads, with one path leading to the life you have always known, safe, predictable, and limited, and the other leading into the unknown, where your potential is untested and your true capabilities are waiting to be discovered. Most people stand at this intersection for years, paralyzed by fear or convinced they are not ready. What if, instead of waiting for a miracle, you realized that the miracle was already inside you? Personal power is not about dominance, wealth, or influence over others. It is about influence over yourself, the ability to direct your thoughts, shape your emotions, and take action in alignment with your deepest desires. Yet so many of us surrender this power without even realizing it. We let habits dictate our choices, beliefs inherited from others shape our worldview, and fears born in childhood decide what is possible for us as adults. Think of a person who starts with nothing, no resources, no special connections, and yet rises to create extraordinary success. How do they do it? It is not magic. It is not luck. It is a set of principles, applied with relentless commitment. When someone learns to master their inner world, the way they think, feel, and respond, they unlock a level of performance and fulfillment that seems almost superhuman to the outside world. Take the story of a young man named David. He grew up in a small town, surrounded by people who believed life was a matter of fate. You take what you are given, they would say, as though dreams were dangerous and ambition was a burden. David was told from childhood that he should be realistic, keep his head down, and not expect too much. For a long time, he listened. He worked hard but without passion, living each day like the one before, waiting for something to change. One day, on his lunch break, David wandered into a used bookstore. A dusty book caught his eye. It was about human potential, the science of achievement, and the mind's ability to shape reality. He bought it for the price of a sandwich. That night, he stayed up reading until sunrise. The words ignited something inside him, a truth he had always felt but never understood, that his destiny was not something to be found, but something to be created. David began to experiment. He noticed that when he stood taller, spoke with more certainty, and visualized success, people responded to him differently. Opportunities that once seemed out of reach began to appear. He replaced the voice in his head that said "I cannot" with one that asked, "How can I?" Slowly, his results changed, not because the world had suddenly become easier, but because he had. The essence of unlimited power is not that the obstacles disappear, but that you rise above them. The challenges you face are not signs to turn back, they are tests to prove you are ready for more. Every belief you hold is like a lens through which you see the world. Change the lens, and you change the view. Change the view, and you change the possibilities you see for yourself. What you are about to explore is not a theory reserved for scholars or motivational speakers. It is a blueprint for anyone regardless of background, education, or current circumstances who wants to take command of their life. It is about mastering three interconnected dimensions: your mind, your body, and your ability to communicate both with yourself and with others. When these align, you become a force of nature. But this journey requires more than just knowledge. Knowledge is potential power. Only applied knowledge backed by belief and consistent action transforms lives. Think of the many people who know they should exercise, eat better, or pursue their dreams, yet never do. The gap between knowing and doing is the very space where most lives remain unfulfilled. The tools you will encounter are designed to bridge that gap permanently. Imagine waking up tomorrow with the certainty that you can handle anything life throws your way. Imagine walking into a room and commanding attention without saying a word, because your presence speaks of confidence and clarity. Imagine making decisions not out of fear, but from a place of vision and purpose. This is not a fantasy. It is a skill set, and like any skill, it can be learned, practiced, and mastered. Unlimited power is not about being better than others, it is about being better than you were yesterday. It is the commitment to constant improvement, the refusal to settle, and the courage to take full responsibility for your life. It means no longer blaming circumstances, luck, or other people for where you are, but instead recognizing that you are the author of your own story. David's transformation was not instant. There were days when doubt returned, when old habits tried to pull him back. But he kept moving forward, fueled by a new standard he had set for himself. Years later, he looked back and realized that the moment he decided to claim his personal power was the moment his life truly began. The truth is, you are capable of far more than you have ever imagined. You have untapped resources of strength, creativity, and resilience within you. The key is learning how to access them on command, to take control of the forces that shape your life, and to step into a future you design deliberately. The question is not whether you have the power. The question is whether you are ready to claim it. Part 1, The Power of Belief, Shaping Your Reality. Beliefs are invisible architects. They lay down the foundations upon which we build our lives, our relationships, careers, health, and happiness. Most people think beliefs are facts, fixed and unchangeable. But the truth is, they are choices often made unconsciously that become self-fulfilling prophecies. Change your beliefs, and your reality changes with them. Let's go back to David's story. After discovering the idea of personal power, he began to notice something strange. Whenever he believed something was possible, his mind immediately began searching for ways to make it happen. But when he told himself it was impossible, his brain shut down, offering excuses instead of solutions. One morning, as he prepared for a job interview at a company far beyond his experience level, David caught himself thinking, "They'll never hire me." That thought carried with it a weight, a sinking in his stomach, a slouch in his posture, a hesitation in his tone. And in that moment, he realized, the interview had already been lost in his mind before he even stepped into the room. Beliefs are like the operating system of your brain. They run silently in the background, dictating how you respond to challenges, opportunities, and setbacks. If the operating system is infected with the virus of limitation, I'm not good enough, I'm not lucky, people like me never succeed, then every decision you make will reflect that programming. Think of the 4-minute mile. For decades, athletes believed it was physically impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Scientists even claimed the human body would collapse under the strain. But in 1954, Roger Bannister broke the barrier. Within a year, several other runners did the same. The moment the belief shifted, performance followed. David decided to rewrite his own mental programming. He began to ask himself a simple but powerful question: what would I attempt if I knew I could not fail? The answers were shocking. He realized he had been dreaming small, not because he lacked ability, but because he had been living inside a prison built from borrowed beliefs. To change a belief, you must first identify it. Most of our limiting beliefs are inherited. We pick them up from parents, teachers, friends, or society without questioning their truth. Phrases like "money doesn't grow on trees," "dreams don't pay the bills," or "be realistic" become rules we follow blindly. The first step to breaking free is becoming aware of the rules you are following. David started writing them down. One belief read, "I'm not a natural leader." Another said, "I need more experience before I can start my own business." With each one, he asked, "Who says? Where did I get this from? Is this belief helping me or holding me back?" Once you challenge a belief, you weaken it. But to truly replace it, you need a stronger belief to take its place. David didn't just tell himself he could be a leader, he found evidence. He remembered times in school when he had inspired his team to win a competition. He recalled moments when his advice had helped a friend make a breakthrough. Slowly, he built a new identity around the belief that he could lead, and lead well. Beliefs don't just shape what we attempt, they shape how we interpret life. Two people can face the same event, say, losing a job, and see it in completely different ways. One sees disaster, the other sees opportunity. The difference isn't in the event, but in the meaning they assign to it. Your beliefs are the lens through which you assign meaning. This is where many people get stuck. They wait for proof before they believe. But in reality, belief often comes before proof. Bannister didn't wait for evidence that the 4-minute mile was possible, he believed first, and then created the evidence. Likewise, David didn't wait for someone to declare him a leader, he acted as one until it became reality. The human mind has an extraordinary ability to find what it is looking for. Psychologists call this the reticular activating system, RAS, a network in your brain that filters information based on what you consider important. If you believe opportunities are everywhere, your RAS will notice them. If you believe the world is against you, it will find proof of that instead. Your beliefs literally direct your perception. David made it a daily practice to affirm his new empowering beliefs and visualize their outcomes. Before important meetings, he would imagine himself speaking with confidence, influencing the room, and achieving the outcome he wanted. Over time, this mental rehearsal wired his brain to expect success, and when you expect success, you naturally act in ways that bring it about. But there's a deeper truth here: Beliefs are not just mental, they are emotional. To truly change a belief, you must feel it in your body. When David replaced "I'm not a leader" with "I am a leader who inspires others," he didn't just say it, he stood taller, spoke louder, and moved with conviction. His physiology reinforced his psychology. This is why many affirmations fail, they remain words without feeling. But when you align your body, emotions, and focus with a belief, it becomes part of you. By the end of his first year practicing these techniques, David had transformed. He landed the job he once thought was impossible, led a successful project, and even started a side business that soon became his main source of income. None of this happened because the world suddenly became easier, it happened because his beliefs changed the way he interacted with the world. Here's the ultimate takeaway: your life is a reflection of your deepest beliefs. If you want to change your life, don't start with your circumstances, start with your beliefs. Ask yourself, what beliefs are keeping me where I am? What new beliefs would move me toward where I want to be? Your reality is not fixed. It is fluid, shaped by the invisible power of what you believe is possible. When you master this, you hold the blueprint to build the life you truly desire. Part 2, the mastery of state, taking charge of your mind and emotions. At the heart of personal power lies a skill most people overlook: the ability to control your state of mind at will. Your state, your mental and emotional condition at any given moment, determines how you think, how you act, and ultimately, the results you get. Most people let their state be dictated by circumstance. They wake up tired, spill coffee on their shirt, hit traffic, and spend the rest of the day irritated and distracted. But if you can learn to choose your state instead of reacting to the environment, you take back the steering wheel of your life. David discovered this lesson the hard way. One morning, just before a crucial presentation, he got a phone call that shook him. A close friend had been in an accident. The friend was okay, but the news left David shaken and distracted. He walked into the meeting carrying that emotional weight. His voice was flat, his energy low, his ideas scattered. The meeting didn't go well. Later, reflecting on the experience, he realized something important: nothing physically prevented him from delivering a great presentation that day. The facts of his life hadn't changed. What changed was his state, and his performance had followed. Tony Robbins teaches that your state is a combination of physiology, focus, and language. Change any one of these, and you change your state. Change all three, and you transform it instantly. 1. Physiology: move your body, change your mind. Your body and mind are deeply connected. Think about it: when you're sad, you slump your shoulders, breathe shallowly, and speak in a softer tone. But if you stand tall, breathe deeply, and smile, it's nearly impossible to stay in a depressed state for long. David experimented with this before important meetings. He would stand up, stretch his chest open, take deep breaths, and walk briskly for a few minutes. This physical shift sent a powerful signal to his brain: we're ready. And sure enough, his thoughts and emotions would begin to align. 2. Focus: where attention goes, energy flows. The second element of state is focus: what you choose to pay attention to. If you focus on problems, you feel stuck. If you focus on solutions, you feel empowered. If you focus on what's wrong in your life, you'll feel anxious. Focus on what's right, and gratitude follows. During one high-pressure project, David caught himself worrying constantly about what could go wrong. The stress was crippling. Then he remembered Robbins' principle: you get what you focus on. He began deliberately focusing on what had already gone right, what resources he had, and what opportunities lay ahead. His confidence returned, and his performance improved. 3. Language: words shape experience. The words you use, both in your head and out loud, shape how you feel. There's a difference between saying "I'm exhausted" and "I need to recharge." One drains you, the other points to a solution. David noticed that in stressful situations, his self-talk often sounded like, "This is a disaster," or "I can't handle this." He replaced these with phrases like, "This is a challenge, and I love challenges," or "I can handle anything that comes my way." The change was immediate. His state shifted from anxiety to determination. The triad of state change. Robbins often teaches the state change triad using physiology, focus, and language together. David turned it into a ritual. Whenever he felt off, he would: physiology: jump up, shake his arms, do a quick set of push-ups, or simply move with power. Focus: ask himself, What's great about this situation? What can I learn from it? Language: speak powerful, positive phrases out loud to reinforce his mindset. Within minutes, his emotional state would be completely different. Why mastering state is so important. Opportunities rarely come when we feel ready. They come at unexpected times, often when life is chaotic. If you can shift into a peak state at will, you can perform at your best no matter what's happening around you. Athletes use this skill constantly. Before stepping onto the field, they pump themselves up with music, physical warm-ups, and mental imagery. Speakers use it before taking the stage. Top performers in any field know, your state is your power source. David began to notice another benefit: by controlling his own state, he could influence others. When he walked into a room with high energy, people mirrored it. When he stayed calm under pressure, his team followed suit. Leaders don't just manage tasks, they manage emotional climates. The breakthrough moment. The real test came during a major sales pitch to an international client. Right before the presentation, the projector malfunctioned. The slides' hours of work were unusable. Old David would have panicked, rushed, and probably delivered a messy talk. But now, he recognized the signs of a slipping state. He excused himself for 2 minutes, walked to the hallway, took deep breaths, rolled his shoulders back, and said out loud, "This is going to be the most engaging presentation I've ever given." He focused on the client's needs, not the technical problem. When he returned, he delivered the pitch entirely from memory, making it conversational and interactive. The client loved it and signed the deal. A lesson for everyone. The events of your life are not the primary cause of your feelings, your state is. And your state is within your control. To practice, try this simple drill. Morning ritual: upon waking, move your body vigorously for a few minutes, list 3 things you're grateful for, and speak 1 empowering sentence out loud. Midday reset: if you feel low energy, change your posture, shift your focus to what's working, and speak a solution-oriented phrase. Evening reflection: ask yourself, when today did I manage my state well? Where can I improve? Over time, this becomes automatic. Instead of being a prisoner of mood swings, you become the master of your inner world. David's journey had taught him something priceless: life will throw challenges at you, but the power to face them comes from within. If you can command your state, you can command your destiny. Because in the end, your state isn't just how you feel, it's the fuel that drives everything you do. Part 3: The Power of Strategy, Modeling Excellence and Creating Your Plan. Having learned to master his state, David discovered something equally powerful: no matter how motivated or confident you feel, if you don't have a clear and effective strategy, your results will be limited. Enthusiasm without direction is like revving an engine while the car is in neutral: lots of noise, no movement. This truth hit him during his early career. After a burst of inspiration from a seminar, David worked 14-hour days, throwing himself into projects with raw energy. But months later, he looked back and realized he was exhausted and had little to show for it. He had been moving, but not necessarily moving in the right direction. That's when he came across one of Tony Robbins' most transformative ideas: success leaves clues. If someone else has already achieved the result you want, you can model their actions, thinking patterns, and beliefs to create your own success, often faster than they did. Modeling, the shortcut to mastery. Modeling is more than copying, it's studying excellence so deeply that you can replicate its core principles in your own way. Robbins teaches that you should look for 3 levels when modeling someone. Beliefs and values: what do they believe about themselves, others, and the world that allows them to succeed? Mental syntax: how do they think? What's their step-by-step decision-making process? Physiology and action patterns: how do they physically approach their work? What habits and rituals do they maintain? David's first experiment with modeling. David wanted to become a top sales performer. Instead of reinventing the wheel, he approached the company's best salesperson, Maria. She had been breaking sales records for years, and her clients were fiercely loyal. He didn't just ask her for tips, he shadowed her for a week. He observed her posture when she walked into a room, the way she asked questions to uncover client needs, and how she listened more than she spoke. He noticed she didn't rush to close a sale, she built trust first. When he asked about her mindset, Maria revealed something surprising: I never think about selling. I think about helping. I believe if I give the client exactly what they need, even if it means less profit for me now, they'll come back again and again. This belief completely shifted David's approach. Within months of applying her strategies, his sales numbers climbed steadily. The strategy triangle: model, adapt, apply. From his experience, David built a simple 3-step framework. Model: find someone who has the result you want. Study them in detail: beliefs, thinking, and behavior. Adapt: customize their approach to fit your strengths, personality, and situation. You don't have to copy them exactly, make it yours. Apply: take action consistently, measure results, and refine as needed. Why strategy outweighs effort alone. Tony Robbins often says, you can run east looking for a sunset, but you'll never find it. Strategy determines whether your energy is being invested in something that will actually work. David once worked with a startup founder who was brilliant but overwhelmed. The founder was putting in 80-hour weeks, trying to do everything himself. David encouraged him to study a business leader who had already scaled a company in the same industry. By modeling that leader's strategy, hiring key team members earlier, focusing on high-value clients first, and delegating non-critical tasks, the founder cut his workload by 30% while tripling revenue within a year. Reverse engineering your goals. One of the most effective strategies Robbins teaches is to work backward from your desired outcome. Instead of starting with "what should I do today?" ask, "What's the ultimate outcome I want? Who has already achieved it? What steps did they take, and in what order?" David applied this when training for his first half marathon. Rather than guessing how to prepare, he found a proven 16-week training plan used by elite runners and adapted it to his schedule. He didn't have to figure out the right mix of long runs, speed work, and rest days. It was already laid out. The compound effect of strategy. A good strategy not only saves time but multiplies results. Think of it like compound interest: small, smart actions repeated over time create exponential growth. David set up a strategy hour every Sunday evening. During that time, he would review his long-term goals, analyze the past week's results, and adjust his plan for the next week. This habit prevented him from drifting into unproductive busyness. The mindset shift. Perhaps the most profound realization was this: strategy is not about being rigid, it's about creating a roadmap you can adjust as you learn. Maria once told David, "A strategy is like a sail on a boat. You set it to catch the wind, but you adjust it constantly as conditions change. The destination stays the same, but the path may shift." This flexibility saved David during a high-stakes product launch. The original marketing plan wasn't generating enough buzz. Instead of pushing harder on a failing approach, he and his team studied a competitor who had successfully built hype. They adapted that competitor's pre-launch campaign strategy, offering sneak previews and building a waitlist, and sales surged. Your action plan for strategy mastery. Identify a model, choose someone who has the results you want. Break down their success, study their beliefs, thought processes, and actions. Test and measure, apply their methods, track results, and tweak as needed. Review weekly, dedicate time to evaluate progress and refine strategy. David's journey taught him that energy fuels action, but strategy directs it. Without strategy, even the most motivated person can burn out chasing the wrong goals. But with a clear, proven plan, you can make massive progress with far less wasted effort. When you combine mastery of state with mastery of strategy, you have both the fuel and the map, and that's when you start moving toward unlimited power. Part 4, The Power of Belief, Shaping Your Reality. David had seen it in himself, and he had seen it in others. Two people with the same skills, resources, and opportunities could produce wildly different results simply because they believed different things about themselves and the world. This is where Tony Robbins' teaching hits deep. Your beliefs are the compass of your life. They determine what you see, what you act on, and what you ignore. If you believe something is impossible, your mind will filter out opportunities that could prove you wrong. If you believe it's possible, you'll start noticing doors you never saw before. The invisible force driving decisions. Beliefs are like the software running in the background of your mind. Most of the time, you're not even aware they're there, yet they shape every choice you make. David once coached a young woman named Priya who dreamed of starting her own business but had been putting it off for years. When he asked why, she said, "I'm just not the kind of person who can lead a team." This wasn't a fact, it was a belief. And as long as she held onto it, she would never take the steps to prove herself wrong. Tony teaches that beliefs are nothing more than a feeling of certainty about what something means. Change the meaning, and you change the belief. Empowering versus limiting beliefs. Robbins divides beliefs into two categories. Limiting beliefs, the mental brakes that keep you from accelerating toward your goals. I'm not smart enough. I don't have the time. People like me don't succeed at that. Empowering beliefs, the mental fuel that drives you forward. Every skill is learnable. Setbacks are feedback. If others can do it, so can I. David realized his own limiting beliefs had been holding him back. In his early sales career, he believed he was bad at public speaking. This belief made him avoid presentations, which in turn limited his visibility in the company. But then he remembered Robbins' insight: beliefs are not set in stone, they are built from repeated experiences and interpretations. Change the experiences, and the belief starts to shift. Rewriting the story. David decided to create new evidence for himself. He joined a local speaking club, forcing himself to give short talks every week. At first, his hands shook and his voice wavered. But over time, as the crowd responded positively, his brain collected new proof that he could, in fact, speak well in public. Within a year, he was leading presentations at work with confidence. The belief "I'm bad at public speaking" had been replaced with "I can inspire people with my words." How beliefs are formed. Robbins explains that beliefs are created through a mix of personal experiences, what you've been through and how you've interpreted it. Social influence, what parents, teachers, friends, and culture have told you. Repetition and emotion, the more often you hear or feel something, the more deeply it's wired in. The boiling water analogy. David often uses an analogy with his clients: beliefs are like the temperature of boiling water. If you believe water boils at 80 degrees Celsius, you'll never turn up the heat enough to actually see it boil. Similarly, if you believe your income can't go above a certain number, you'll subconsciously stop yourself from taking actions that would push past it. Breaking limiting beliefs. Tony Robbins gives a simple but powerful process. Identify the limiting belief. What's the thought that's been holding you back? Challenge its validity. Where's the proof? Can you think of examples that contradict it? Create a new empowering belief. Replace "I'm not good at X" with "I can learn to master X." Condition the new belief. Rehearse it daily, visualize it, and act on it until it feels natural. Priya's breakthrough. Remember Priya, who believed she couldn't lead? David had her list every time in her life when she had organized people or inspired others, even small things, like planning a family trip. Slowly, she began to see evidence she had ignored. They then created a new belief: "I can learn to lead," by focusing on helping people succeed. Priya started a small side project with 2 friends. When it worked well, her confidence grew. A year later, she launched her own business, and that old belief was a distant memory. Beliefs create self-fulfilling prophecies. One of the most fascinating truths David learned is that beliefs tend to prove themselves right. If you believe you're bad at networking, you'll avoid events, stay in the corner, and come home with no new contacts, proving yourself correct. But if you believe you're good at making connections, you'll smile more, initiate conversations, and guess what? People will respond positively. The emotional link. It's not enough to just think a new belief, you have to feel it. Emotion is what cements beliefs into your nervous system. That's why Robbins emphasizes associating empowering beliefs with strong, positive emotions through visualization, movement, and celebration. David started celebrating small wins immediately. Close a sale? Celebrate. Finish a workout? Celebrate. Every small victory reinforced his belief that he was capable of creating success. Your action plan for belief mastery. Write down 3 limiting beliefs that are holding you back. For each, find 3 counterexamples from your own life that prove it wrong. Craft a new empowering belief to replace it. Visualize and act on it daily until it becomes second nature. David's journey with belief taught him this: your life is not limited by your circumstances, it's limited by your perceptions of what's possible. Once you change your beliefs, you don't just change your thoughts, you change your future. Part 5, The Power of Energy, Maintaining Peak Performance. When David first started chasing big goals, he focused almost entirely on strategy. He wanted the perfect plan, the right steps, and the best tools. But over time, he realized something Tony Robbins often says: success is 80% psychology and 20% mechanics. And part of that psychology, maybe the most overlooked part, is energy. You can have the most brilliant plan in the world, but if your body is tired, your mind foggy, and your spirit drained, you'll struggle to execute it. The day energy became the priority. David learned this lesson the hard way. It was during a product launch at his company. He had been working late nights, skipping meals, surviving on coffee, and barely moving from his desk. The big presentation day arrived, and despite knowing his content inside out, he felt sluggish, distracted, and unfocused. The result? He fumbled through his pitch, forgot key points, and lost an important investor's interest. That night, he replayed Tony Robbins' words in his mind: "Your energy is the fuel for everything you do." And he vowed to treat his body as the powerhouse it truly was. The triad of peak energy. Robbins teaches that energy doesn't just happen to you, it's something you can deliberately create. The three pillars are: physical energy, how you fuel, move, and rest your body; emotional energy, the states you choose to live in daily; mental energy, the clarity and focus you bring to your tasks. One physical energy, your biological battery. David realized that if he wanted consistent high performance, he needed to treat his body like an athlete would. Nutrition, he swapped sugar-filled snacks for whole foods, lean proteins, leafy greens, nuts, and fresh fruits. Instead of huge heavy meals that made him crash, he ate smaller portions more frequently. Hydration, he noticed a direct correlation: on days he drank plenty of water, his mind was sharper. On dehydrated days, brain fog took over. Movement, sitting for hours was killing his productivity. He started doing short stretching and walking breaks every hour. Sometimes he'd even take calls while walking outside. The transformation was immediate. He felt lighter, more alert, and far more resilient to stress. 2. Emotional energy, your inner weather. Tony says your emotional state can change in seconds if you know how to control it. David began using state change techniques before important meetings. This meant standing tall, shoulders back; taking deep, powerful breaths; playing music that pumped him up; visualizing a successful outcome. In just 2 minutes, he could shift from stress to confident. And that emotional shift made people respond to him differently. 3. Mental energy, guarding your focus. Even with physical health and emotional mastery, David found his energy leaked away when he let distractions take over. So he set rules. No phone during deep work sessions. Emails checked only twice a day. The first hour after waking dedicated to learning, not reacting to messages. By protecting his focus, he discovered he could achieve in 4 hours what used to take him 8. The ripple effect of energy. High energy didn't just improve David's work. It made him more present in conversations, more playful with friends, and more resilient during challenges. Priya, the entrepreneur from earlier, told him she'd adopted the same approach. She stopped seeing exercise as optional and started seeing it as a non-negotiable business tool. "I don't just work out for my body," she said. "I work out for my business." Tony Robbins' Rapid Energy Reset. Robbins often uses these quick tools to reset his energy. Breathing exercises, inhaling for a count of 4, holding for 4, exhaling for 4. Hydration boost, drinking a full glass of water with lemon. Posture shift, standing tall and stretching. Power move, doing something physically intense for a few seconds to wake up the nervous system. David began incorporating these into his day. Even during long work sessions, he could hit reset and feel revitalized. Why most people burn out. David noticed that many driven people make the same mistake: they run themselves into the ground thinking they can rest later. But the body doesn't work like that. Energy is a daily deposit system. If you don't replenish it regularly, the account runs dry, and so does your performance. The success energy loop. There's a beautiful feedback cycle. High energy, rightward arrow, better performance. Better performance, rightward arrow, greater confidence. Greater confidence, rightward arrow, more energy. David began living inside that loop, and it transformed not just his results, but how much he enjoyed the journey. Your action plan for energy mastery. Move daily, even if it's just a 10-minute walk. Eat for energy, not just taste. Avoid heavy midday meals that make you sluggish. Hydrate, aim for 2 to 3 liters a day. Guard your mornings, use them for creativity and high-value work. Check your emotional state. Ask, am I showing up energized? If not, shift it physically. David's realization was simple but life-changing: discipline with your energy equals freedom with your time. He no longer saw health as separate from success, it was the foundation of it. And every day he maintained his energy, he felt like he was adding fuel to the fire that would carry him toward his biggest dreams. Part 6, The Power of Relationships, Building a Network of Influence. When David looked back at his journey, he noticed something: every major breakthrough in his life had been connected to a person. A mentor who opened his eyes to possibilities. A friend who introduced him to the right investor. A colleague who challenged his thinking and pushed him to grow. Tony Robbins says, "The quality of your life is the quality of your relationships." That statement became a guiding principle for David. The early mistake: going solo. In the early days, David thought success was a solo mission. He'd work late nights alone, avoid networking events, and believe that if I just work hard enough, people will notice. But he learned the hard truth: success is rarely about being noticed, it's about being connected. A pivotal moment came when his mentor asked, "David, if you disappeared tomorrow, how many people would actually notice? How many would miss you because of the value you bring into their lives?" It was a wake-up call. The relationship shift. From that day, David made building relationships a priority, not in a fake, transactional way, but with genuine curiosity and care. He began following 3 rules. Give first, expect nothing, find ways to add value to people before asking for anything in return. Be genuinely interested, ask about their dreams, struggles, and passions. Stay in touch, relationships fade without consistent connection. The story of Priya and the investor. One of David's closest friends, Priya, faced a funding crisis. She had a brilliant product but couldn't secure the capital to scale. Instead of just wishing her luck, David introduced her to an investor he had met at a leadership event months earlier. That introduction changed everything. Priya closed her funding round within weeks. Priya told David later, "You didn't just help my business. You changed my life." And that's when David realized the real power of relationships: your network's wins become your wins too. Tony's 3 types of relationships. Robbins often explains that there are 3 categories of people in your life. Peers, people on a similar journey as you. They provide support, collaboration, and accountability. Mentors, those ahead of you who can guide and accelerate your growth. Ments, people you can help, which deepens your own understanding and creates legacy. David began intentionally seeking balance among these 3. He joined masterminds for peers, booked lunches with mentors, and offered advice to younger entrepreneurs. The law of proximity. Tony says, proximity is power. Being around high achievers naturally raises your standards. David tested this by attending a high-level seminar. Just being in a room where people spoke about million-dollar ideas casually shifted his mindset. The problems he thought were huge started to feel small compared to the challenges others were tackling. This made him realize, your environment shapes your thinking faster than you think. Avoiding the energy drainers. As important as it was to connect with great people, David also learned to protect himself from toxic ones. People who constantly complain. Those who doubt every idea. The ones who drain energy without giving anything back. Tony teaches that you become who you spend the most time with. If you want to grow, you need to audit your circle. David started setting boundaries, limiting time with negative people and expanding time with those who inspire and challenge him. The ripple effect of giving. One of David's favorite habits became making introductions. If he met someone interesting, he'd think, who else should they meet? Without expecting anything back, he'd connect people. Over time, this built him a reputation as a connector, someone who was valuable simply because of his network and generosity. This led to opportunities he never could have planned for. Speaking gigs. Partnerships. Insider information on market trends. How to build influence without power. Many people think influence comes from a title or money, but Tony says it's about trust. David followed 3 steps to build trust. Show up consistently, reliability builds credibility. Follow through, do what you say you'll do. Share credit, publicly acknowledge others' contributions. Before long, people began to seek his opinion not because he was the smartest, but because they trusted him. Your action plan for relationship power. List your 10 most important relationships, nurture them intentionally. Reach out to 1 new person a week, build your circle gradually. Give value without expectation, advice, resources, or introductions. Audit your circle, limit exposure to negative influences. Attend high-value gatherings, be in rooms that elevate your thinking. The big lesson. David realized that relationships aren't just a part of success, they are success. You can have skills, resources, and ambition, but without the right people, your journey will be slow and lonely. With strong connections, however, opportunities multiply, challenges become easier to face, and life feels richer. As Tony says, the secret to living is giving. And nowhere is that truer than in the relationships we choose to build. Part 7, The Power of Contribution, Living with Purpose. When David achieved financial success, he thought he had reached the summit of life. But one morning, sitting in his beautiful home with a cup of coffee, he felt an unexpected emptiness. Is this all there is? He wondered. That question haunted him for weeks until he attended another Tony Robbins event. On stage, Tony said something that cut through the noise. Success without fulfillment is the ultimate failure. The secret to living is giving. The shift from success to significance. David realized that for years, his focus had been on getting clients, getting profits, getting recognition. But the most fulfilled people he had ever met were givers. They measured their lives not by what they accumulated but by the lives they touched. This wasn't about charity alone, it was about living with purpose. The teacher who changed his life. David remembered Mr. Sharma, his high school teacher. Mr. Sharma would stay after class to help struggling students, often without pay, and never expected recognition. One day, when David asked him why he worked so hard for so little reward, Mr. Sharma smiled and said, "The reward is knowing I planted seeds. I may never see all of them grow, but I know they will." Years later, David finally understood that statement. Contribution is about planting seeds you may never see bloom. Finding your cause. Tony explains that contribution doesn't have to mean starting a charity or donating millions. It can mean sharing your skills with someone who can't afford them. Mentoring a young person. Simply being fully present for a friend in pain. David started small, offering free workshops to young entrepreneurs from underprivileged backgrounds. At first, he thought he was helping them, but soon he realized they were helping him, reminding him of the hunger and hope he once had. The energy of contribution. Something strange happened when David started giving more. He felt more energized. His business grew faster. Opportunities appeared unexpectedly. Tony calls this the law of reciprocity. When you give freely, you create an energy that attracts abundance. It wasn't magic, it was human nature. People trust and support those who give without strings attached. The power of purpose in hard times. A few years later, David's business hit a major downturn. Profits dropped, and stress levels rose. Oddly, what kept him going wasn't the thought of saving his business, it was knowing that dozens of young entrepreneurs still looked up to him. He couldn't quit, because quitting would mean letting them down. That sense of responsibility fueled him more than any personal ambition could. Tony often says, if you want to make life work, you need to find something bigger than yourself to serve. David was living proof. How to discover your contribution path. Tony teaches a simple framework to find where you can make the most impact. Identify your gifts, skills, experiences, or resources you have that others value. Find who needs them most, look for communities or individuals that would be transformed by what you can offer. Give consistently. Contribution works best when it's a habit, not a one-time act. David's gifts were business strategy, public speaking, and connecting people, so he focused his giving in those areas. The ripple effect. One of David's mentors, a young woman named Alicia, started her own small business thanks to his guidance. Years later, she told him, "Because you believed in me, I believed in myself. Now I mentor others." That's when David realized your contribution doesn't stop with the person you help. It spreads, often in ways you'll never see. Why contribution is the ultimate power. Here's why Tony puts contribution at the top of his life's priorities. It gives meaning to success. Money and achievements feel empty without purpose. It creates legacy. What you give lives on beyond you. It brings joy instantly. Giving releases feel-good chemicals in the brain, boosting happiness. For David, giving turned life into a mission, not just a race. Your action plan for contribution power. List 3 skills or resources you have that could help others. Commit 1 hour a week to giving them away for free. Support a cause that resonates with you financially or through time. Teach what you've learned, it multiplies impact. Make giving a lifestyle, not a seasonal activity. The full circle. Years later, David stood on a stage in front of thousands, sharing his story. As he looked at the audience, he thought of all the people who had poured into him, mentors, friends, even strangers. Now, he was the one pouring into others. And in that moment, he understood, unlimited power isn't about control over others, it's about the ability to lift them up, to inspire them, and to leave them better than you found them. We've walked through the journey Tony Robbins maps out in Unlimited Power, from mastering your mind and body to shaping your beliefs, directing your focus, taking decisive action, building empowering habits, and living a life of contribution. But here's the truth: reading or listening to these ideas isn't enough. Unlimited power is not a theory you understand, it's a discipline you live. Tony says it best. It's in your moments of decision that your destiny is shaped. The power is in you, right now. You can change your emotional state in seconds. You can turn fear into fuel. You can reframe any setback into a stepping stone. You can create habits that make success inevitable. And most importantly, you can live not just for yourself, but for a purpose bigger than you. Your final takeaway. This book is not a one-time dose of motivation. It's a blueprint you can revisit whenever you feel stuck, drained, or doubtful. Remember, master your state before you try to master your circumstances. Shape beliefs that serve you, not limit you. Focus on what you want, not what you fear. Take massive, consistent action toward your vision. Keep improving. Small daily changes compound into greatness. Give back. The ultimate measure of success is the difference you make in others' lives. Why this matters now. The world is full of people waiting for the right time to start living. But the right time doesn't come, it's created. And if you apply even a fraction of what you've learned here, you'll stop waiting and start shaping your destiny today. From books to action. Here at Books Arena, my mission is to take these powerful ideas from the world's greatest thinkers and deliver them to you in a way that inspires action, not just awareness. If this audiobook summary of Unlimited Power gave you even one insight that could change your life, imagine what will happen when you start living these principles every single day. Your next step. If you found value in this journey, make sure you subscribe to Books Arena so you don't miss our upcoming full-length audiobook-style summaries. We explore books that can transform your thinking, elevate your mindset, and help you design the life you truly want. And remember, the ultimate power is already within you. You just have to unleash it. Welcome to Books Arena. Today, we are diving into one of the most influential psychology books of our time, Thinking, Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. This book is a masterclass in understanding how our minds work, how we make decisions, and how our thinking can both help and mislead us in everyday life. Daniel Kahneman is not just a writer, he is a Nobel Prize-winning psychologist whose work has transformed economics, medicine, law, and public policy. What he gives us in this book is a window into the two systems that drive the way we think, System 1 and System 2. System 1 is fast, automatic, and emotional. It is the part of your brain that helps you finish familiar sentences, swerve when a car cuts in front of you, or make a quick judgment about someone you just met. It operates effortlessly and is always running in the background. System 1 is like a reflex. It is useful, but it is also prone to errors. System 2 is slow, deliberate, and logical. It kicks in when you solve a difficult math problem, write a business email, or try to remember where you parked your car at the airport. System 2 is the mental muscle that requires effort, attention, and focus. It helps you make rational decisions, but it is lazy. It only activates when it absolutely has to. Kahneman explains that while we like to think of ourselves as rational, most of the time, we are not. We rely far more on System 1, our fast, intuitive thinking, and this can lead to cognitive biases, poor decisions, and misunderstandings. For example, imagine you are buying a car. The salesperson tells you the original price is 10 Indian rupees lakhs but offers a discount to bring it down to 8.5 Indian rupees lakhs. You might feel like you are getting a great deal, but your fast thinking is being manipulated by what Kahneman calls the anchoring effect. You are anchored to the original number, even though the actual value of the car may be much lower. In thinking, fast and slow, we are not just reading a psychology book, we are confronting ourselves. We are learning why we fall for marketing tricks, why we misjudge risks, why we make snap decisions in love or in work, and why confidence does not always equal competence. Real-life stories and experiments throughout the book make the lessons relatable and unforgettable. From the Israeli judges who unknowingly gave harsher sentences before lunch, to financial experts who consistently overestimate their predictions, Kahneman shows how even the smartest people are vulnerable to cognitive traps. This audiobook will take you through the major concepts in the book, broken down into easy-to-follow parts, with examples that relate to daily life, business, relationships, and more. By the end, you will not only recognize your own thinking patterns, you will also learn how to challenge them, slow down, and make better decisions. So, let us begin the journey into the science of the mind. This is Thinking, Fast and Slow, simplified, structured, and brought to you here, only on Books Arena. The human mind is a remarkable machine. But it does not always work the way we think it does. Daniel Kahneman begins the book by introducing the two systems that govern our thinking. System 1 is fast, intuitive, and emotional. System 2 is slow, effortful, and logical. These two systems are always active but not equally. Most of the time, we are in System 1 mode. It helps us respond to immediate threats, read facial expressions, or drive on familiar roads. For example, if you see a snake while walking, you jump back before you even have time to think. That is System 1. It acts quickly, often without conscious control. System 2 comes in when something requires deeper attention. Solving a math problem like 23 times 47 is a task for System 2. It requires you to pause, focus, and calculate. But here is the thing, System 2 is lazy. It does not like to be activated unless it absolutely has to be. So, in many situations, System 1 takes over even when it should not. This is where our thinking can go wrong. Kahneman introduces one of the key ideas in the book, cognitive bias. This is when our thinking is distorted, usually by relying too much on System 1. One powerful example is the priming effect. It shows how subtle cues can influence our behavior without us realizing it. In an experiment, people were asked to solve word puzzles that involved elderly-related words like Florida, bingo, and wrinkle. After finishing the task, those who had seen the elderly-themed words actually walked slower when leaving the room, as if their brains had associated the words with old age and changed their behavior. That is the power of System 1. It is fast and automatic, but it is also easily influenced. Another important idea is the law of least effort. The mind, just like the body, is always trying to save energy. This is why we form habits. It is why we take shortcuts in thinking, and why we often believe the first thing that comes to mind even if it is wrong. Consider this example: what is heavier, a kilogram of steel or a kilogram of cotton? Most people instinctively say steel. It feels obvious. But a kilogram is a kilogram, the weight is the same. It is just our System 1 playing tricks, because it thinks about density and texture, not actual weight. Kahneman shares another compelling story. Two groups of students were asked the same question in different ways. Group 1 was asked, is the height of the tallest redwood more or less than 1,200 feet? What do you think the actual height is? Group 2 was asked, is the height of the tallest redwood more or less than 180 feet? What do you think the actual height is? The first group gave much higher estimates than the second group. This is the anchoring effect in action. The number presented in the question influences the answer even though it should not. Anchoring is everywhere in pricing, negotiations, salaries. If someone tells you a product originally costs 5,000 Indian rupees but is now only 2,999 Indian rupees, that 5,000 Indian rupees is an anchor. It makes the lower price feel like a better deal, even if it is not. Another key point Kahneman makes is that System 1 loves stories. We are natural storytellers. When we hear facts that fit into a good narrative, we accept them easily. This is why people often believe confident speakers, even when they are wrong. We prefer a good story over a complex truth. Take the stock market. Many people follow news reports that say, the market dropped because of fears over inflation, or stocks rose today due to strong consumer confidence. These are stories, not always facts. But they sound reasonable, so we believe them. System 1 likes neat explanations, even when the reality is messy. The danger is that these stories can lead to overconfidence. We often feel we understand the world better than we really do. This is called the illusion of understanding. It is what makes people think they can predict elections, markets, or outcomes in sports when in fact, randomness plays a huge role. System 2 can help correct these errors. But only if we are willing to slow down and engage it. Here is a real-life example. Suppose you are hiring someone. You interview two candidates. One is confident, smiles a lot, and gives clear answers. The other is quiet, awkward, but has better qualifications. Most people will choose the first one because System 1 is judging on first impressions. But a thoughtful review of the resumes, references, and test results might show that the second candidate is a better fit. System 2 would catch that if it is used. But System 2 requires effort. And we are not always willing to put in that effort, especially when we are tired, stressed, or distracted. This is why Kahneman warns us, we must be aware of our mental shortcuts. They are useful, but they are also dangerous. In this part of the book, Kahneman is not trying to make us feel bad about our thinking. He is showing us how we think and giving us the tools to think better. When we understand how System 1 and System 2 work, we become more aware of our decisions. We can pause before reacting. We can question our first impressions. We can avoid falling for simple stories or misleading statistics. This awareness is the first step to better judgment. One of the most fascinating parts of this book is how Daniel Kahneman breaks down the way we misunderstand probability, risk, and statistics. Humans are not naturally good at thinking in numbers. Our minds are built to spot patterns, not calculate chances. And this creates serious problems in how we make decisions. Take for example the availability heuristic. This is a mental shortcut we use when we try to judge how common or likely something is. Instead of analyzing data, we ask ourselves, can I think of an example? If something is easy to remember like a plane crash, a shark attack, or a terrorist incident, we believe it is more likely to happen, even if the actual odds are very low. This is why people are often more afraid of flying than driving, even though car accidents are far more common and dangerous. Kahneman shares a powerful story. After September 11th, many Americans avoided flying out of fear. As a result, more people chose to drive long distances. Ironically, this led to a measurable increase in car accident deaths because people were using a more dangerous mode of travel to avoid what felt like the bigger risk. That is the availability heuristic at work. Another common error is substitution. When faced with a difficult question, we often answer an easier one instead without realizing it. For instance, if asked, "How happy are you with your life these days?" that is a complex question. But you might substitute it with, "What is my mood right now?" If you are having a good day, you might say life is good. If something just went wrong, you might say it is not. We do not do this consciously. System 1 takes over and gives a quick answer even to a question that deserves more thought. This is also true in moral judgment. Consider a question like, is this policy fair? Instead of carefully analyzing the details, people might substitute it with, do I like the people proposing it? If the answer is yes, they assume the policy is fair. If not, they reject it regardless of the actual content. Kahneman also talks about base rate neglect, which is our tendency to ignore general information in favor of specific information, especially if it sounds personal or emotional. For example, imagine you are told that Steve is shy, likes to read, and avoids loud social situations. Then you are asked, is Steve more likely to be a librarian or a farmer? Most people say librarian. But statistically, there are far more male farmers than male librarians. That base rate, the overall number of farmers versus librarians, is more important than the personality traits. But our minds focus on the story, not the data. That is base rate neglect. It shows up in hiring, in medical decisions, even in courtrooms. People tend to overvalue personal details and undervalue statistical information, which often leads to bad decisions. Another powerful example from the book is the representativeness heuristic. This is when we judge something based on how much it resembles a typical case, even if the statistics do not support it. Imagine you meet someone who is quiet, loves poetry, and wears glasses. You are told he is either a truck driver or a professor of literature. Instinctively, many will say professor. But statistically, there are tens of thousands more truck drivers than literature professors. So even if the personality fits the image of a professor, the odds are still higher that he is a truck driver. This is the conflict between intuitive thinking and statistical thinking. Kahneman points out that when we rely only on intuition, when we let System 1 make all the calls, we are more likely to fall into these traps. But when we slow down and bring in System 2, we can check ourselves. Think about how this applies in real life. In hiring, people often trust their gut feeling about a candidate. But research shows that structured interviews and tests, even simple checklists, predict job performance better than intuition. In investing, people follow hot stocks or take advice from confident-sounding experts. But the data shows that low-cost index funds, based on long-term strategy, outperform most human traders. Even in medicine, Kahneman shares examples where doctors misdiagnosed cases because they relied on memory and experience rather than statistical tools which could have saved lives. One of the most sobering ideas in the book is outcome bias, the tendency to judge a decision by its result rather than the quality of the decision at the time. For example, imagine a coach calls a risky play in a football game. If it works, everyone says he is a genius. If it fails, people say he is foolish. But the truth is, the decision might have been smart either way. The outcome does not always reflect the process. This is why learning to think statistically is so important. We need to separate the decision from the outcome, especially in complex, uncertain situations. Kahneman's work also helps us see how little control we actually have over our thinking. Many of these biases and errors are built into how our minds operate. We do not choose to make them, but we can choose to understand them and correct for them when it matters most. System 1 is not bad. In fact, it helps us navigate the world quickly and efficiently. But it is prone to errors, especially in situations that require logic, math, or careful judgment. System 2 can help us catch those errors if we are willing to activate it. This part of the book challenges us to look at how we make decisions every day, from what we buy, to who we trust, to how we judge risk. And it gives us a way to think better. In this part of the book, Daniel Kahneman explores the powerful concept of loss aversion, a principle that helps explain why we often act irrationally when faced with risk or uncertainty. Loss aversion is the idea that losses hurt more than gains feel good. In other words, losing 1,000 Indian rupees feels worse than the happiness you get from gaining 1,000 Indian rupees. This might sound simple, but it has profound consequences. Imagine a coin toss. If it lands heads, you win 1,000 Indian rupees. If it lands tails, you lose 800 Indian rupees. Even though the expected value is positive, most people would avoid this gamble. Why? Because the fear of loss weighs more heavily than the joy of gain. Loss aversion explains many everyday behaviors. Why do people hold on to losing stocks instead of selling? Because selling makes the loss real. Why do people stay in unhappy relationships or jobs? Because the fear of future regret feels greater than the pain of staying. Loss aversion makes us cling to the status quo even when better options are available. Kahneman introduces prospect theory, developed with his colleague Amos Tversky. It challenges the classic economic idea that people make rational choices based on value. Instead, Kahneman shows that people make decisions based on perceived gains and losses, not actual outcomes. Here is an example. Suppose you are given two options. Option A, a sure gain of 900 Indian rupees. Option B, a 90% chance to win 1,000 Indian rupees, and a 10% chance to win nothing. Most people choose option A, the safe gain. Now, suppose you are given two other options. Option C, a sure loss of 900 Indian rupees. Option D, a 90% chance to lose 1,000 Indian rupees, and a 10% chance to lose nothing. Now, most people choose option D, the risky loss. This shift in preference is not logical, but it is deeply human. We are risk-averse when it comes to gains, and risk-seeking when it comes to avoiding losses. This is a fundamental insight of prospect theory, and it explains many real-world behaviors from financial investing to consumer decisions. Kahneman also explains how people assign value based on reference points, not absolute outcomes. For example, if you expect to earn 50,000 Indian rupees in a month but only earn 45,000 Indian rupees, you feel disappointed even if that is still a solid income. But if you expected 40,000 Indian rupees and earned 45,000 Indian rupees, you feel happy. The number itself did not change. What changed was your reference point. This is why expectations shape our happiness more than actual circumstances. Another powerful concept Kahneman discusses is the endowment effect, the tendency to overvalue things we own simply because we own them. In an experiment, Participants were given coffee mugs and then asked how much they would sell them for. Others were asked how much they would pay to buy the same mugs. The sellers demanded almost twice as much as the buyers were willing to pay. Why? Because once something is ours, it feels more valuable. This affects not just small decisions, but also major ones like pricing a home, negotiating a salary, or letting go of possessions. Think about this in everyday life. People often keep clothes they never wear, gadgets they never use, or subscriptions they no longer need. Letting go feels like a loss, even if it brings no benefit. This emotional weight of ownership influences many financial and lifestyle choices. Kahneman then turns to the topic of framing, how the way information is presented can change our decisions, even if the facts remain the same. Imagine two statements about a medical procedure. Statement 1, the survival rate is 90%. Statement 2, the mortality rate is 10%. They are mathematically identical, but people feel much more comfortable with the first one. That is the power of framing. Our emotions respond to how something sounds, not just what it means. Advertisers, politicians, and marketers use framing all the time. Words are carefully chosen to trigger specific reactions. For instance, a tax might be called a contribution, or a fee might be labeled a convenience charge. These subtle choices shape how we feel and how we act. Kahneman gives another example from a legal context. If a judge is told, this crime has a maximum sentence of 20 years, versus, this crime usually gets a 5-year sentence, the final judgment could differ. Even expert professionals are affected by framing, because System 1 reacts emotionally before System 2 kicks in logically. One of the most humbling lessons of this part is that context matters more than we think. We do not make decisions in a vacuum. Our choices are shaped by how questions are asked, what options are available, and what expectations we carry into the situation. Kahneman's research shows that even trained experts, doctors, judges, investors fall into these traps. It is not about intelligence. It is about being human. That is why awareness is so important. When you know that your brain values losses more than gains, you can pause before rejecting a risky but worthwhile opportunity. When you realize that the way something is framed affects your reaction, you can reframe it for yourself and see it more clearly. This part of thinking, fast and slow, reveals the hidden forces that drive so many of our decisions: fear of loss, emotional attachment, poor risk assessment, and the influence of language. By understanding these forces, we gain more control over how we respond to the world. In this section, Daniel Kahneman introduces one of the most striking and thought-provoking ideas in the book, the concept of the two selves, the experiencing self and the remembering self. The experiencing self is the part of you that lives in the present moment. It feels your emotions as they happen: the joy of laughter, the sting of criticism, the taste of your favorite food. It lives minute by minute. The remembering self, on the other hand, is the part of you that writes your life story. It reflects, judges, compares, and forms opinions about what happened. The remembering self is what we rely on when we answer questions like, was that a good vacation, or am I happy with my life? What Kahneman discovered is that these two selves do not always agree, and that the remembering self often takes over. For example, consider a vacation where everything was enjoyable: the weather, the food, the activities. But on the last day, you lose your passport and spend hours at the embassy. The remembering self might conclude, that vacation was a disaster. The painful ending overshadows all the good days that came before. This phenomenon is known as the peak end rule. It states that our memories of experiences are shaped not by how long they lasted or how they averaged out, but by the most intense moment, the peak, and how they ended. In one study, patients undergoing a painful medical procedure were asked to rate their pain in real time, and then later, to recall the overall experience. Some patients had a longer procedure, but the end was made slightly more comfortable. Strangely, those patients remembered the experience more positively even though they suffered for longer. The more gentle ending softened the memory. This shows how memory is not a perfect recorder. It is a storyteller. And sometimes, the story it tells distorts reality. Understanding the difference between the experiencing self and the remembering self can change how we make decisions. For example, people often go on trips or attend events not because they enjoy them in the moment, but because they want the memory. We chase moments that photograph well, not necessarily those that feel good as they happen. It also influences how we define happiness. Kahneman draws a powerful distinction between experienced happiness and remembered happiness. Experienced happiness is how content you feel throughout your daily life. Remembered happiness is how you feel about your life when you think about it. Studies have shown that these two forms of happiness can diverge. A person might be smiling often and enjoying their daily routine, yet feel unsatisfied when asked to assess their life as a whole. Or someone might feel stressed day to day, but look back with pride on what they accomplished. This insight challenges how we think about well-being. It raises the question, should we focus on improving the moments we live through, or the memories we keep? Kahneman explains that society tends to reward the remembering self. Awards, recognition, life narratives, they are all based on what we remember, not what we lived. But this often leads people to make choices that favor future memories over present enjoyment. For instance, a person might choose a prestigious but stressful job because it sounds impressive and will make a good story even if they are miserable in the role. Or they might plan an extravagant wedding to impress others, even though the stress of planning and debt outweigh the joy of the day. One real-life example comes from people who run marathons. Many do not enjoy the physical pain during the race, but they look back with pride. They treasure the memory, not the experience itself. This does not mean we should ignore the remembering self, but we should be aware of how much control it has. By understanding these two perspectives, we can make better, more balanced decisions. Kahneman also explores how time is perceived differently by the two selves. The experiencing self is affected by duration, it feels the passage of time. But the remembering self ignores time. This explains why a short, intense experience can be more memorable than a long, mild one. Think of a 2-hour concert that builds to a powerful, emotional ending, versus a 5-hour workshop that is mildly interesting throughout but never peaks. Most people will remember the concert more fondly even though it was shorter. This has implications for how we design experiences in education, healthcare, travel, and even entertainment. If you want someone to remember something positively, focus on creating a powerful peak and a gentle ending. Another insight from Kahneman's work is that we often confuse being happy in your life with being happy about your life. The first is about your day-to-day feelings. The second is about your overall sense of meaning, success, or satisfaction. You might feel tired and frustrated after a long week of parenting, but when you reflect, you feel proud and fulfilled. Or you might feel relaxed during a holiday, but when you reflect, you feel like the time was wasted. This duality shows why well-being is complex. There is no single number or score that captures it. Happiness depends not just on what happens to us, but on how we interpret and remember it. Daniel Kahneman encourages us to pay more attention to the experiencing self. After all, it is the one actually living our lives. If we only live for the story, we may miss the joy of the moment. By recognizing the difference between our two selves, we can make choices that serve both enjoying the present, and building memories we are proud of. This part of the book helps us see our internal world more clearly. It reminds us that the way we remember life can differ greatly from how we experience it. And that understanding this difference is a step toward wiser, more satisfying decisions. In this part of the book, Daniel Kahneman explores the concept of overconfidence, a cognitive bias that affects our decision-making across personal, professional, and global matters. Overconfidence is the tendency to overestimate our knowledge, our predictions, and our ability to control outcomes even when evidence suggests otherwise. This is a deep flaw in our judgment, and Kahneman shows how it stems from the way System 1 constructs coherent stories out of incomplete information. When we make decisions, we often do not pause to consider all the facts. Instead, we form quick conclusions based on what feels right. Kahneman calls this what you see is all there is, or vitiating. Our mind tends to ignore what it does not know and builds confidence from the information it has, no matter how limited that may be. For example, if you hear that a startup founder is charismatic, confident, and has worked at big companies before, you might confidently predict that the startup will succeed even if you know nothing about the market, the product, or the competition. Your brain fills in the gaps and creates a compelling story. Real-life consequences of overconfidence can be serious. Consider the financial crisis of 2008. Experts, banks, and investors believed they had mastered risk through complex financial models. They felt sure of their predictions. But they were wrong. Their models did not account for rare events, and their confidence blinded them to the warning signs. The result was a global collapse. Kahneman also discusses how experts themselves are not immune to this bias. In fact, the more experienced a person becomes, the more confident they may feel even when their accuracy does not improve. He shares a famous study involving stock market analysts. Over the years, analysts made countless predictions about stock prices. Yet their success rate was no better than chance. Despite this, they remained confident in their abilities. Their predictions had the illusion of skill, but not the reality of it. This illusion of skill appears in many fields: medicine, business, politics. People trust their gut, rely on patterns that may not exist, and ignore the randomness of real-life events. Another powerful concept in this section is the narrative fallacy. Humans are natural storytellers. We love clear explanations and logical plots. But the world is often messy, random, and unpredictable. When something happens like a company's success, we try to explain it with a neat story: it succeeded because of great leadership and a bold strategy. But we ignore the role of luck, timing, and hidden variables. One famous example is Google. Today, it is one of the world's most successful companies. Many books and articles explain its rise using visionary leadership and smart decisions. But countless other startups also had brilliant founders and great ideas and still failed. Luck, timing, and circumstances played a huge role in Google's success, but those parts of the story are often left out. Kahneman warns us against falling for hindsight bias, the tendency to see events as predictable after they happen. It makes us believe we knew it all along, even if we did not. This bias not only distorts our memory but also damages our learning. If we think success or failure was obvious, we miss the deeper, more complex lessons. A key takeaway here is the planning fallacy. It is our tendency to underestimate how long tasks will take and how much they will cost, even when we have past experience telling us otherwise. Think of a time you started a project, maybe building a website, renovating your room, or preparing for exams. You might have thought, this will take a week. But in the end, it took 3 weeks and cost more than expected. That is the planning fallacy at work. Even large companies and governments fall into this trap. One example Kahneman shares is the construction of a new public building that was scheduled to take 2 years. Despite expert planning, it took over 5 years and went over budget by millions. Why? Because planners focused on best-case scenarios and ignored potential delays, obstacles, or unexpected issues. To overcome the planning fallacy, Kahneman recommends using the outside view. Instead of focusing on your unique project, look at similar past projects. What was their timeline? What problems did they face? This broader perspective helps ground our expectations in reality. Another example is students estimating how long it will take to finish their thesis. Many say a few months. But when asked how long it took others, they admit around a year. Their personal prediction is hopeful, the outside view is realistic. Kahneman urges readers to adopt more humility in their decisions. Confidence does not equal accuracy. A strong opinion does not make it true. Recognizing this can help us make more careful, thoughtful choices in business, relationships, finances, and beyond. He emphasizes that even seasoned professionals fall into the overconfidence trap. Doctors may misdiagnose. CEOs may make bold moves that backfire. Politicians may make promises they cannot keep. The problem is not lack of intelligence. It is the structure of the human mind. Being aware of our cognitive limitations is not a weakness. It is strength. It allows us to double-check our assumptions, seek other viewpoints, and respect uncertainty. In this part of the book, Kahneman invites us to be more realistic, more humble, and more open to learning. The mind craves certainty, but the world is uncertain. The sooner we accept that, the wiser our decisions will become. In this section, Daniel Kahneman introduces the concept of loss aversion, one of the most well-documented and powerful ideas in behavioral economics. It describes the human tendency to feel the pain of losses more intensely than the pleasure of gains. Simply put, losing 100 Indian rupees hurts more than gaining 100 Indian rupees feels good. This imbalance affects how we make choices and react to outcomes. Imagine a coin toss. If it lands on heads, you win 150 Indian rupees. If it lands on tails, you lose 100 Indian rupees. Statistically, the bet is in your favor, the expected value is positive. But many people would decline the offer. Why? Because the fear of loss outweighs the potential for gain. That is loss aversion in action. Kahneman explains that this fear is not just emotional, it is hardwired. Our brains treat potential losses as more significant than equivalent gains. This was an evolutionary advantage. For our ancestors, avoiding danger was often more critical than securing extra benefits. A missed opportunity might mean less food, but a bad decision could mean injury or death. In today's world, this instinct still drives our behavior, often in irrational ways. Consider the stock market. Investors hold on to losing stocks for too long, hoping they will rebound, and sell winning stocks too quickly to lock in gains. This behavior, known as the disposition effect, reflects our discomfort with realizing a loss even when logic says otherwise. Another everyday example is insurance. People pay high premiums to avoid potential losses, even if the actual risk is low. It is why extended warranties, travel insurance, and return protection plans are so popular, not because they make financial sense, but because they ease our fear of future regret. Kahneman, along with Amos Tversky, developed a theory called prospect theory to better explain this kind of decision-making under uncertainty. Unlike traditional economic models that assume humans are perfectly rational, prospect theory shows that people evaluate outcomes relative to a reference point, often their current state, and that losses loom larger than gains. This leads to inconsistent choices, depending on how options are framed. For example, imagine two scenarios. Scenario A, you are told, you will receive 1,000 Indian rupees. Then you must choose between getting 500 Indian rupees more for sure, or flipping a coin. Heads you get 1,000 Indian rupees more, tails you get nothing. Most people choose the sure 500 Indian rupees. It feels safer. Scenario B, you are told, you will receive 2,000 Indian rupees. Then you must choose between losing 500 Indian rupees for sure, or flipping a coin. Heads you lose nothing, tails you lose Indian rupee 1000. Now, most people choose to gamble. The outcomes in both cases are mathematically identical, but the framing is different. One sounds like a gain, the other like a loss. People avoid risk when a gain is framed, but seek risk to avoid a loss. This bias can be seen in politics, marketing, and even personal relationships. For instance, a health message that says 90% of people survive the surgery is more reassuring than one that says 10% of people die, even though both mean the same thing. Marketers use loss aversion to drive sales. Phrases like "don't miss out" or "limited time only" trigger our fear of losing a benefit. Subscription services offer free trials that auto-renew, knowing we are reluctant to give up something we already have. Even gym memberships tap into this effect. People continue to pay for unused services just to avoid the feeling of losing their commitment or identity as someone who works out. Kahneman points out that ownership increases the perceived value of things, a phenomenon called the endowment effect. Once we own something, we are less willing to part with it, not because its market value has changed, but because giving it up feels like a loss. In one experiment, students were given coffee mugs and then offered a chance to sell them. On average, sellers demanded nearly twice as much as buyers were willing to pay. The mugs had become part of the seller's identity, and losing them felt painful. This principle applies to larger decisions too. Homeowners often overvalue their property simply because they own it. People cling to outdated products, subscriptions, or habits not because they are still useful, but because giving them up feels like a defeat. Loss aversion even affects our personal goals. Once we commit to a plan or path, we struggle to let go even when it no longer serves us. It is why someone may stay in an unfulfilling job or relationship. Leaving feels like a loss, even if it opens the door to better outcomes. To navigate these biases, Kahneman suggests we step back and ask, if I did not already own this or were not already committed, would I still choose it? This question forces us to evaluate our decisions more objectively. Understanding loss aversion helps us make smarter financial choices, avoid emotional traps, and recognize when we are clinging to something out of fear rather than value. It also encourages empathy. If someone resists a change or reacts strongly to a small loss, it is not always because they are stubborn or irrational. Their brain is reacting to perceived pain that can outweigh logic. By recognizing this in ourselves and others, we can communicate more effectively, design better systems, and create environments that support more balanced decisions. Kahneman's insights into loss aversion give us a window into our emotional responses to risk and reward. They remind us that behind every financial decision, every argument, and every moment of hesitation, there is a story our mind is telling, one that often favors safety over growth, and familiarity over change. In the final chapters of Thinking, Fast and Slow, Daniel Kahneman brings everything together by introducing two important ideas that help us understand how we evaluate our experiences and make long-term decisions: the experiencing self and the remembering self. These two selves do not always agree, and this disagreement has a big impact on how we live our lives. The experiencing self is the one that lives through each moment. It is the part of us that feels the warmth of the sun, the taste of our food, or the annoyance of a traffic jam. It lives in the present. The remembering self, on the other hand, is the storyteller. It looks back, creates narratives, and decides how good or bad an experience was overall. It is the remembering self that makes decisions about the future, like where to vacation again or what kind of job to pursue. Kahneman explains that the remembering self often misrepresents the experience. It tends to focus on the peak moments, the most intense part of an experience, and how it ends, while largely ignoring the duration. This is called the peak end rule. For example, imagine two people go through different medical procedures. The first person has 10 minutes of mild discomfort. The second person has 10 minutes of the same discomfort, followed by 5 more minutes that are slightly less painful. Surprisingly, the second person might report a better overall experience simply because it ended on a less painful note. Logically, more total discomfort should feel worse. But the remembering self judges based on the peak and the end, not the sum of pain over time. This is why someone might describe a long vacation with a few bad days at the end as worse than a short, perfect weekend, even if the long vacation had more total pleasure. The memory of the ending shapes the overall judgment. This distinction explains many puzzling behaviors. People may choose to repeat experiences that were not enjoyable throughout, simply because they ended well. Or they might avoid things that were mostly good, but ended badly. It also reveals how we misjudge happiness. The experiencing self might enjoy a peaceful, ordinary life. But the remembering self wants stories, achievements, and meaning, even if it causes stress. Consider someone who takes a high-paying but demanding job. Their daily life may be full of pressure, long hours, and little peace. The experiencing self suffers. But the remembering self might say, "I am successful," and feel satisfied. Or think of people who climb Mount Everest. The journey is freezing, painful, and exhausting. But the memory becomes a proud story. They may even want to do it again, not because it felt good at the time, but because the story it created was meaningful. Kahneman's point is not that one self is right and the other is wrong, but that we need to be aware of both. If we always follow the remembering self, we may make choices that sound good on paper, but feel bad in real life. If we only listen to the experiencing self, we may avoid challenges that give our life depth and purpose. This insight is powerful in areas like healthcare, education, travel, and public policy. For example, when designing patient care, hospitals can improve the ending of treatments even if they do not reduce the total discomfort, and patients will remember the experience more positively. When making life decisions, Kahneman suggests we ask, do I want to have this experience, or do I want to have the memory of this experience? This question helps clarify what we truly value. As the book closes, Kahneman reflects on the limitations of the human mind. We like to think we are in control, that we make decisions based on reason and logic. But the truth is, our minds are full of biases, shortcuts, and blind spots. These mental habits were shaped by evolution to help us survive, not to be perfectly rational. And yet, by studying these patterns, by observing how System 1 jumps to conclusions and how System 2 can be lazy or misled, we can become more aware of our own thinking. Awareness gives us a chance to pause, question, and improve. Kahneman does not promise that we can completely avoid bias. But he offers tools to reduce the damage they cause. We can slow down when it matters. We can consider the outside view instead of trusting our gut. We can use checklists, seek feedback, and design systems that compensate for human error. This mindset is already changing fields like medicine, law, investing, and government. More and more, leaders and professionals are recognizing that even the smartest people make flawed decisions, and that true wisdom comes from building structures that protect against those flaws. In our personal lives, these insights can help us become more forgiving of ourselves and of others. They show us that mistakes are not always due to laziness or carelessness. Sometimes, they are just the result of how our minds work. By understanding how we think and how we often misthink, we can live more consciously, more thoughtfully, and more compassionately. Kahneman's Thinking, Fast and Slow is not just a psychology book. It is a mirror. It shows us who we are, how we react, how we decide, how we fool ourselves, and invites us to grow beyond those patterns. And so, as we come to the end of Thinking, Fast and Slow, we are left with a deeper understanding of how our minds work and how they often work against us. Daniel Kahneman has taken us on a journey through the two systems of thinking: the fast, automatic reactions of System 1, and the slow, deliberate reasoning of System 2. We have seen how our judgments are shaped by hidden biases, how we make decisions based on emotions instead of logic, and how memory often distorts our experience. But above all, this book gives us a chance to pause and reflect. It teaches us to slow down when it matters, to question our assumptions, and to think not just quickly, but wisely. Whether we are managing money, navigating relationships, leading a team, or simply trying to make better choices in everyday life, understanding the machinery of our thoughts is the first step toward mastering them. At Books Arena, we believe in bringing such powerful books to life not just as summaries, but as meaningful stories filled with insights, real-life examples, and lessons we can apply. If this audiobook helped you see your mind in a new way, helped you become a bit more thoughtful, or made you reconsider how you make decisions, then it has done its job. Thank you for spending your time with us. Keep questioning, keep learning, and keep growing one book at a time. This is Books Arena, where great minds meet great books. There is a moment in every life when the noise becomes too loud. The expectations, the deadlines, the comparisons, they start to blur into a kind of chaos. You might be scrolling through your phone, surrounded by people, yet feel completely disconnected. Everything looks fine on the outside. But inside, something is missing. That is where Jay Shetty once found himself. A young man chasing grades, goals, and approval until a single lecture changed the course of his life. It was not given by a billionaire or a CEO, but by a monk. Someone who had given up everything the world calls success in order to discover something deeper: peace, purpose, and presence. Jay did something few would dare to do. He left the world behind and went to live in an ashram in India. No status. No likes. No distractions. Just silence, discipline, and self-discovery. Years later, he returned not as a man who had abandoned the world, but as someone who had learned how to live within it with more clarity and calm than ever before. Think Like a Monk is not about becoming a monk. It is about discovering the mindset that monks cultivate, a mindset of stillness in the middle of stress, of clarity in the middle of chaos, and of meaning in a world that often rewards the meaningless. In this journey, we are going to explore how to train the mind, let go of negativity, connect deeply with others, and live every day with greater intention. This is not just a summary. This is an invitation to think deeper, live calmer, and become who you were always meant to be. Welcome to Books Arena. Part 1, Letting Go of the Noise. It often begins subtly: a glance at someone else's life, a quiet doubt, a whisper of comparison. Before long, that whisper grows louder. You start measuring your worth by someone else's milestones. You chase achievements you never truly chose. You live by labels handed to you by family, society, school, even strangers. Jay Shetty calls this the monkey mind, the restless, anxious, reactive part of us that jumps from thought to thought, never still, always seeking more. It is not entirely our fault. From the time we are children, we are conditioned to perform, compete, and conform. We are told who to be before we ever ask ourselves who we truly are. Jay's own story began this way. He grew up in London, surrounded by smart, driven friends. He studied hard, tried to fit in, and followed the standard definition of success. But something felt off. He saw his peers pursuing money and status with energy, but little joy. He saw the exhaustion hidden behind the smiles. He wondered, is this really it? Then he heard a monk speak. It was not a sermon or a lecture. It was more like a mirror. The monk spoke of peace, purpose, and discipline not in a vague, mystical way, but with clarity and conviction. Jay was struck by the contrast. Here was someone who had nothing the world usually chases, and yet he radiated fulfillment. He was not overwhelmed by noise. He was free from it. That moment changed everything. Jay left for India, where he lived as a monk for several years. His days were not filled with luxury, but with silence, service, and self-inquiry. And the first thing he had to unlearn was the noise, the voices that told him what he should be. One of the first exercises he learned in the ashram was detachment. Not in the sense of cold disconnection, but the practice of stepping back and observing your thoughts. Instead of reacting to every impulse, he was taught to pause, to breathe, to watch. It sounds simple. But try it. When your phone buzzes, do you reach for it without thinking? When someone criticizes you, do you immediately defend yourself? When life feels uncertain, Do you distract yourself or do you sit still with the discomfort? The monk mindset begins with that stillness. It is about creating space between you and your reactions, between who you are and who the world expects you to be. Jay describes an exercise monks often do with their trainees. They sit in silence and imagine their life stripped of titles, no job description, no relationship status, no wealth, no possessions. Just the self. The question is, who am I, without all of that? That question is not meant to make you feel empty. It is meant to reveal how much of your identity is borrowed. Because once you know what is borrowed, you can begin to let it go. Letting go is not about giving up everything. It is about releasing what no longer aligns with your truth. Jay met people in both the monastery and the modern world who were successful on the outside but deeply lost inside. They had never paused to ask if their ladder was leaning against the right wall. They were climbing, yes, but climbing toward what? Letting go of the noise also means learning to say no. No to the habits that numb rather than heal. No to relationships that drain rather than uplift. No to the internal voice that tells you to prove your worth instead of simply being worthy. Jay shares a powerful image. When you are trying to tune into a clear signal, static makes it impossible to hear the message. Life works the same way. Your inner voice, the one that knows your deepest values and truths, cannot be heard when you are constantly tuned into the noise. One story Jay tells is of a businessman who came to him feeling overwhelmed and disconnected. He had reached every external goal but felt like a stranger in his own life. Jay asked him, "When was the last time you sat in silence?" The man could not remember. "That," Jay said, "is where we begin." And that is where we begin, too. Letting go of the noise is not a one-time act. It is a daily practice. It means setting boundaries with technology, with toxic people, and most of all, with your own self-judgment. It means giving yourself the permission to slow down and listen. Not just to podcasts or playlists but to your inner life. The monk life is not about escaping the world. It is about facing it with clarity. You do not need to shave your head or wear robes to think like a monk. But you do need to pause. You need to question the noise, confront the stories you have inherited, and dare to define success on your own terms. Because only when you let go of who you are not, can you begin to become who you truly are. Part 2, The Power of Intention. There is a strange moment that happens to many people, maybe you have felt it too. You get what you always thought you wanted, the job, the degree, the house, the relationship. And then suddenly, instead of joy, there is a quiet discomfort. You think, why do I not feel more fulfilled? It is not that anything is wrong. It is that something is missing. That missing piece is intention. In the monastery, Jay Shetty learned that every action begins in the mind. Before you speak a word, take a step, or chase a dream, there is an intention, whether you are aware of it or not. Monks train themselves to become hyper-aware of that inner purpose. They do not just ask, "What am I doing?" They ask, "Why am I doing it?" Jay explains that in the outside world, most people live out of habit or pressure. We choose careers because of money or prestige. We follow routines because everyone else does. We stay in relationships because we fear change, not because they bring growth. And when the outcomes disappoint us, we are surprised. In the monastery, intention is everything. When monks sweep the floor, they do it to practice humility. When they chant, it is not to sound holy, but to calm and focus the mind. Every action is linked to a deeper purpose. Now, imagine bringing that same clarity to everyday life. Jay tells the story of a young woman who reached out to him in tears. She had worked for years to earn a prestigious position at a major company. On the outside, she was admired. Inside, she felt empty. Jay asked her one simple question: whose dream are you living? That question unlocked something. She realized she had built a life to make others proud, her parents, her professors, her peers, but never herself. When you live without intention, your life becomes a response to other people's expectations. But when you live with intention, your life becomes an expression of your values. Jay describes values like clarity, compassion, service, and growth, the things that resonate deep within you, even when no one else is watching. But most people have never taken the time to identify their core values. That is where confusion begins. Monks begin their training by identifying the principles they want to embody. Every choice flows from those principles. Jay adapted this into a simple practice for the modern world: reflection. Every morning, ask yourself, What matters most to me today? Am I acting from ego, or from purpose? When your actions align with your values, you feel at peace, even when things are difficult. When they do not align, you feel tension even if you are succeeding by the world's standards. There is another key lesson Jay shares about intention: it must be greater than yourself. In the monastery, monks believe that service purifies the ego. When you do something only for yourself, it limits your growth. But when your intention includes helping others even in small ways, it expands your life. Jay once mentored a college student who was obsessed with getting into a top graduate program. He studied endlessly, competed with others, and pushed himself to the edge of burnout. Jay asked him, "Who will your success serve?" At first, the student had no answer. But over time, he realized his dream was to use his education to create better access to healthcare in rural communities. That new intention shifted everything. Studying was no longer a burden, it was an act of service. We often think purpose must be something grand or public. But monks know that intention is a quiet power. A mother waking early to prepare food for her children can do it with deep intention. A barista serving coffee can turn a brief moment into a gesture of kindness. A person choosing not to gossip is making a powerful statement silently, but meaningfully. Jay reminds us that intention is like the seed of a tree. If you plant a mango seed, you will grow mangoes. If you plant anger, fear, or ego, that is what will grow in your life. But if you plant purpose, compassion, and integrity, your life blossoms accordingly. The modern world rewards results. But the monk mindset teaches us to focus on the roots. What is driving you? What energy are you carrying into your work, your relationships, your choices? When you live with intention, your outer life becomes a reflection of your inner clarity. That is the shift Jay wants us to make. Not to stop chasing dreams, but to chase the right ones, for the right reasons. Because when you know your why, you find strength in your struggles, peace in your process, and meaning in every step you take. Part 3, Training the Mind. Imagine a mind that wakes up calm, focused, and energized. No anxiety about the past, no panic about the future. Just a deep sense of presence. That is the kind of mind monks strive to train, and the kind of mind Jay Shetty believes is possible for everyone. But training the mind is not easy, especially in a world built to distract it. The modern world is designed for stimulation. From the moment we wake up, we are hit with messages, headlines, to-do lists, and endless notifications. Our attention is constantly pulled in 100 directions, leaving us drained before the day even begins. Monks face distractions too, but instead of giving in, they train their minds to remain still, even in chaos. Jay compares the mind to a monkey. Left untamed, it jumps from thought to thought, reacting impulsively. One moment, you are worried about a message you have not answered. The next, you are remembering a conversation from 3 years ago. Then you are imagining the worst outcome for something that has not even happened. That is the monkey mind at work, restless, anxious, scattered. Monks tame the monkey mind through a combination of stillness, silence, and self-awareness. Jay introduces one of the most powerful tools monks use: meditation. But not the kind that feels complicated or mystical. Meditation, in its essence, is the practice of focusing the mind on the breath, a mantra, a sound, or even an image. It is about choosing where your attention goes, and gently bringing it back when it wanders. Jay tells the story of his early struggles with meditation. During his first weeks in the ashram, he could barely sit still. His thoughts would race. His back would ache. His mind would make excuses. But the monks encouraged him to stay with it. Not to force the silence, but to observe the noise without judgment. Over time, Jay noticed a shift. The more he meditated, the more space he created between stimulus and response. Instead of reacting immediately to stress or anger, he began to respond with calm and clarity. That is the real power of training the mind. It gives you control over your emotions, instead of letting your emotions control you. He shares a beautiful practice called breath work, simple, intentional breathing patterns that help regulate the nervous system. Monks believe that the breath is the gateway to the mind. Fast, shallow breathing creates tension. Slow, deep breathing creates peace. Just a few minutes of mindful breathing each day can calm anxiety, sharpen focus, and restore energy. Jay also emphasizes the importance of creating mental awareness. He suggests doing a daily mind audit, asking yourself, what am I feeding my mind? Just like your body reflects what you eat, Your mind reflects what you consume. If you constantly absorb fear, gossip, or negativity, your mind will mirror that energy. But if you fill it with wisdom, peace, and gratitude, it becomes your default setting. In the monastery, monks are mindful of every input. The books they read, the conversations they have, the environment they keep, all are chosen with intention. Jay brings this lesson to the modern world by encouraging people to declutter their digital lives. That means unfollowing accounts that trigger insecurity, limiting time on apps that drain focus, and surrounding yourself with content that uplifts and inspires. Training the mind also means managing self-talk. Most people are unaware of how harshly they speak to themselves. We criticize our flaws, relieve our mistakes, and predict failure before trying. Jay teaches that the voice inside your head should be your biggest ally, not your worst critic. When you change your self-talk from "I cannot handle this" to "I am doing my best," your entire experience changes. One of the most powerful insights Jay shares is this: peace is not found by running away from problems, but by building a mind strong enough to face them. In the monastery, monks do not live stress-free lives. They face challenges too. But because they have trained their minds, they meet those challenges with acceptance, not resistance. They do not deny emotions, they understand them. They do not suppress pain, they sit with it until it passes. That is emotional mastery, and it begins with mental discipline. Jay encourages us to create a daily routine for the mind, just as we do for the body. Even 5 to 10 minutes of stillness in the morning can set the tone for the entire day. Journaling thoughts, practicing gratitude, and repeating affirmations are also forms of mental training. These small habits, when done consistently, rewire the brain for resilience. He reminds us that just like a muscle, the mind grows stronger with consistent effort. You do not have to be perfect. You just have to be present. In a world that pushes us to rush, react, and perform, the monk mindset invites us to pause, breathe, and be. Because the greatest freedom we can experience is not out there in the world, it is the quiet strength we build within. Part 4, Living with Purpose. There comes a time when a person asks the deeper question, not just "what am I doing today," but "why am I doing it at all?" Many people work hard, achieve more, even earn the respect of others, yet still feel empty at the end of the day. That is because success without purpose is like climbing a ladder only to realize it was leaning against the wrong wall. For monks, the search for purpose is not an afterthought, it is the central focus of life. Jay Shetty recalls a moment in the ashram when a monk asked him a simple question: what would you do if you had nothing to gain from it? That one question stripped away ego, ambition, and fear. And what remained was the seed of purpose. Jay introduces the idea of dharma, a Sanskrit word that means one's true calling. It is the intersection of what you love, what you are good at, and what the world needs. Your dharma is not a job title or a status. It is the contribution you were made to give. To help people uncover their dharma, Jay breaks it down into layers. First, he encourages exploring your passions, the activities that make time disappear. Then, he asks people to reflect on their skills, the things they do well, often without even realizing it. And finally, he adds the layer of service, how those gifts can help others. He shares the story of a young artist who loved painting but was told it would never lead to a stable career. So she suppressed her gift for years, choosing a path that felt safer. But the more she ignored her passion, the more restless she became. Eventually, she began painting again, this time creating art for children's hospitals, bringing joy where it was most needed. That shift from self-expression to service transformed her work into purpose. Jay reminds us that purpose is not always grand. You do not have to change the entire world. You just have to make a meaningful difference in your corner of it. A teacher who lights up a child's mind. A cook who brings comfort through food. A friend who shows up with presence. These are all acts of purpose. But discovering purpose requires letting go of ego. In the modern world, many chase titles, money, or applause. And while those things may offer short-term satisfaction, they rarely bring lasting fulfillment. Jay explains that when you live for validation, you hand your happiness to someone else. But when you live from purpose, you carry your peace with you. To live with purpose, monks practice detachment, not indifference, but freedom. They give their best effort, but let go of the outcome. This mindset creates a powerful inner shift. Instead of asking "what do I get?" they ask "how can I give?" Jay shares a personal story about his transition out of monk life. Leaving the ashram was not easy. He felt torn between his inner growth and the world he once left behind. But then he realized he could serve even more people by bringing monk wisdom into everyday life. That clarity became his purpose, to bridge the ancient and the modern, the spiritual and the practical. He also introduces a practice monks use to stay connected to their dharma, gratitude with intention. Every morning, they reflect not just on what they are thankful for, but why they are doing what they are doing. This daily reminder keeps their actions aligned with their values. Living with purpose also means making tough choices. It may mean saying no to distractions. It may mean walking away from expectations. It may even mean starting over. But as Jay explains, the cost of not following your purpose is far greater. It is the quiet regret that creeps in over time, the kind that whispers, "What if you had tried?" One of the most powerful exercises he suggests is writing your eulogy, not to be morbid, but to get clear. If you had to sum up your life in one page, what would it say? What would you want to be remembered for? When you know the answer to that question, you begin to live with intention instead of habit. Jay points out that purpose does not remove difficulty. In fact, it often demands more from you. But it also gives more to you: more energy, more direction, and more joy. Purpose turns pain into growth, struggle into strength, and effort into meaning. He encourages listeners not to wait for a perfect moment to begin living with purpose. You do not need a plan. You need a reason. Even a small, purposeful action, a kind word, a thoughtful gesture, a creative spark can lead you closer to your dharma. When you live with purpose, every day becomes more than a task list. It becomes a chance to express your truth, to serve something bigger, and to grow into the best version of yourself. Because in the end, the most successful life is not the one filled with achievements, it is the one filled with meaning. Part 5, Overcoming Negativity. There are few forces more powerful than negativity. It creeps in through whispers of doubt, angry comments, painful memories, and the energy of the people around us. Often, we do not even notice it until it has shaped our thoughts, stolen our joy, and altered how we see the world. Jay Shetty learned early on in his monk training that negativity is not just something you experience, it is something you absorb, unless you are trained not to. In the monastery, monks treated negativity like smoke in a room, invisible at first, but toxic if left unchecked. Their solution? Constant ventilation, not of windows, but of the mind. One story Jay shares is about a fellow monk who carried around a small stone in his pocket. Every time he caught himself judging, complaining, or thinking negatively about someone, he would move the stone to the other pocket. It was a physical reminder that even monks are not immune to dark thoughts, but they are committed to noticing and redirecting them. Negativity often begins with what we consume. The news, gossip, toxic conversations, even the people we spend time with, all of it has energy. Jay introduces the concept of energy circles, how we must become intentional about who we allow close. There are people who drain us with complaints, criticisms, and chaos. And there are people who lift us up with hope, kindness, and honesty. One of the hardest lessons is learning to set boundaries even with people we care about. He explains that boundaries are not walls. They are filters. A wall shuts everyone out. A filter lets love in and keeps harm out. In the monastery, boundaries were non-negotiable. Silence was protected. Time was respected. Energy was valued. Imagine if we treated our attention the same way in the modern world. Jay also reveals how negativity often hides in disguise. It can look like perfectionism, when we are always criticizing ourselves. It can sound like being realistic, when really we are just afraid. It can even feel like ambition, when we constantly compare ourselves to others and feel we are never enough. One woman Jay coached had a habit of saying, "I just tell it like it is." But when she looked closely, she realized she was often just spreading her own frustration, not truth. She was stuck in a cycle of venting without healing. With practice, she began asking herself, "Am I sharing this to connect or to complain?" That simple question shifted her entire approach to conversations. Monks use tools to manage negative emotions instead of being controlled by them. One powerful technique is naming the emotion. When anger rises, they do not say, "I am angry." They say, "I notice that anger is present." That small shift in language creates space between you and the feeling. You are no longer the anger. You are the observer. Another tool is meditative journaling. Jay recommends writing down recurring negative thoughts and then challenging them. Are they true? Are they helpful? Where did they come from? Often, Our inner critic sounds like a parent, a teacher, or an old friend whose voice we absorbed long ago. But just because the thought is familiar does not make it correct. Jay also dives into forgiveness not as something we give to others first, but as something we give to ourselves. Carrying resentment is like drinking poison and expecting someone else to suffer. Forgiveness is not weakness. It is strength. It means refusing to let someone else's hurtful act define your life. He shares the story of a man who had been betrayed in business. For years, he carried that anger with him into every meeting, every deal. He believed it made him sharper, tougher. But it also made him colder, more guarded, and more miserable. When he finally forgave not for the other person's sake, but his own, he felt free again. Forgiveness cleared space for trust, creativity, and peace to return. Jay reminds us that overcoming negativity is not a one-time decision. It is a daily practice. It is choosing not to take the bait of every insult. It is choosing not to carry every burden. It is choosing to ask, is this worth my peace? He also emphasizes the importance of replacing negativity, not just removing it. You cannot just stop being negative. You must fill that space with gratitude, with service, with something beautiful. Just like monks clean their rooms every morning, we must clean our minds. He recommends starting each day with a positive trigger, a line of scripture, a meaningful quote, a memory that fills you with hope. And ending the day with reflection, what did I carry that I could let go of tomorrow? In the end, Jay says, your mind is your home. You live there every day. You cannot control who knocks at the door, but you can choose who gets to come in and stay. Negativity may visit, but it does not have to move in. Part 6, Relationships with Depth. There is a strange irony in today's world. We are more connected than ever, yet many feel completely alone. We text more than we talk, scroll more than we see, and speak more than we listen. Relationships, both personal and professional, often suffer because we have not been taught how to create depth. That is something Jay Shetty learned not in a classroom, but in the silence of a monastery. Monks spend hours in deep reflection, often in pairs, just listening. No interruptions. No advice. No judgment. One speaks. The other listens fully, without glancing at a clock or a phone. Jay says that this kind of presence is rare, and when given, it becomes powerful. Because at our core, what every person wants is to be seen, heard, and understood. He tells the story of a woman who came to him after a talk. She said, "My husband never listens to me." When Jay asked if she ever felt truly seen by him, she paused, then shook her head. That is the difference between hearing and listening. Hearing is passive. Listening, real listening, is a gift. Jay introduces the idea of the 3 C's that define meaningful relationships: compatibility, character, and commitment. Compatibility is about shared values, not hobbies, but deeper things like how you view time, money, family, and purpose. 2 people can love the same movies and still live in completely different emotional worlds. Character is about how someone treats others when there is nothing to gain. In the monastery, monks judged character not by how well someone meditated, but by how they behaved during chores. Were they kind, honest, humble? Commitment is not just staying through the good. It is showing up during the difficult, uncomfortable moments. And commitment is not just for romantic partners. It applies to friendships, teams, and families too. Jay says, the real test of any relationship is not how you feel during good times, but how you treat each other during hard ones. But what if the people in our lives are the source of pain, stress, or confusion? Jay teaches that relationships require boundaries, and not the kind drawn out of anger. The best boundaries come from self-awareness. If someone's presence constantly brings you anxiety, guilt, or exhaustion, it is okay to take a step back. You are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. He shares the story of a man who kept tolerating his friend's toxic behavior out of loyalty. "We've been friends since school," he would say. But when he finally stepped away, he realized he had been loyal to the history, not the health of the friendship. It is possible to honor someone's past role in your life without giving them unlimited access to your present. Jay also emphasizes that a monk-like relationship is built on service, not status. In a world where many people ask, "What can I get?" monks are trained to ask, "How can I give?" Imagine what would shift if we applied that to our relationships. If instead of expecting people to complete us, we focused on how we could support their growth. He tells the story of 2 monks sweeping the courtyard together every morning. One was older, slower, but meticulous. The younger monk would finish first, but instead of waiting, he would quietly start helping his elder, without words. That unspoken support became their silent bond, not because it was grand, but because it was consistent. Jay encourages practicing gratitude within relationships. Not just the big gestures, but the everyday moments: a smile, a shared meal, a kind word. Gratitude softens criticism and opens the door to deeper connection. One of the most transformative lessons he learned was the power of compassion over correction. Instead of saying, "You are wrong," try saying, "Help me understand." Instead of trying to win arguments, try to win clarity. This shift from ego to empathy turns confrontation into conversation. And then there is forgiveness, not as a final act, but as a regular practice. People hurt each other. Even the most loving relationships will have pain. But forgiveness is the bridge that lets us move forward. Not forgetting, but releasing the weight of resentment. Jay shares how monks view forgiveness like sweeping the floor. Dust always returns, so you keep sweeping. Hurt resurfaces, so you keep forgiving. Not because they deserve it, but because you deserve peace. Relationships thrive on truth, but truth delivered with kindness. Honesty is not cruelty. And silence is not peace. Jay advises that when you speak, ask yourself, is it true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? At the end of it all, he reminds us that the relationship we have with others will always reflect the relationship we have with ourselves. If you are harsh with yourself, you will be harsh with others. If you expect perfection from yourself, you will demand it from everyone around you. That is why the journey toward better relationships always begins within. You do not need to be a monk to build meaningful relationships. You just need to listen deeply, give freely, set clear boundaries, and lead with compassion. Because connection, in its purest form, is not built in loud moments. It is built in quiet ones, when someone feels seen, heard, and loved for exactly who they are. Part 7, Purpose and the Daily Practice of Living. What is the point of it all? That question, heavy, silent, and quietly powerful, sits in the hearts of many. We chase jobs, relationships, success, admiration. But beneath all of it, we hope it adds up to something that means something. Jay Shetty's time as a monk stripped everything down to the core. No fame. No wealth. Just silence, repetition, and the pursuit of one thing: purpose. But here is what he learned: purpose is not found. It is built. And it is not a grand mission announced to the world. It often starts quietly, with what he calls the intersection of passion, strengths, and service. Let us break that down, not like a lecture, but like a story you are living. A man once came to Jay in confusion. "I love music," he said. "But I work in finance. I feel dead inside." Jay asked him, "Do you believe music could help others? Could it inspire? Heal? Bring joy?" The man paused. "Yes, always." Then Jay said, "Then maybe your purpose is not just playing music. Maybe it is sharing your gift in service of others, even if it starts with one song, one person." That is where the monk mindset flips everything. Instead of chasing purpose as something external, a perfect job, a huge audience, monks focus on service. How can I use what I love, and what I am good at, to make a difference? Purpose is not something we wait to receive. It is something we practice. Jay says the biggest myth about purpose is that it arrives with clarity. But more often, it begins with uncertainty. You try, you stumble, you learn. You help one person, then another. And slowly, the fog clears. Not because you were struck by lightning, but because you kept showing up. And this is where routine becomes sacred. Monks wake up early not out of punishment, but to align themselves before the world pulls them in different directions. They chant, meditate, serve, not to escape life, but to strengthen their ability to live it with intention. Jay learned that how you start your day defines how you carry it. Instead of reaching for the phone, he teaches people to begin with stillness. Breathe. Reflect. Ask yourself, what kind of energy do I want to carry into the world today? Not what the world wants from you, but who you want to be in it. He shares the story of a young entrepreneur who changed everything by shifting her morning routine. Instead of checking emails the moment she woke up, she meditated for 10 minutes and wrote down 3 things she was grateful for. Within weeks, her stress decreased, and her clarity increased. She stopped reacting to life and started creating it. This is the heart of monk thinking, living by design, not default. Jay also speaks of detachment, a word many misunderstand. Detachment is not giving up or becoming numb. It is about holding on to what matters, without letting it control you. It is the ability to act with full passion, yet remain peaceful regardless of the result. He tells the story of a monk tending to a garden. He plants with care, waters every day, yet never clings to the outcome. Some days the flowers bloom, other days they wilt. But his joy comes from doing the work, not owning the result. That is detachment, loving fully, without being owned by the outcome. Purpose grows when we let go of results and focus on values. Jay challenges us to ask, what do I stand for? What do I want people to feel when they experience my presence, my work, my energy? Maybe it is kindness. Maybe it is courage. Maybe it is honesty. These values become the compass you follow even when life throws storms your way. He emphasizes one final lesson: death is the greatest teacher. In the monastery, monks reflect on mortality regularly, not to be morbid, but to sharpen their awareness of what matters. When we realize time is limited, we stop wasting it on things that do not feed our soul. Jay recalls sitting by the bed of a dying man who said, "I spent so long chasing things I never truly wanted. I just never stopped to ask what I did." Purpose, then, is not about doing more. It is about doing what matters again and again, until it becomes who you are. You do not need a monastery. You do not need to wear robes. You just need the courage to live each day with intention, the humility to learn from your mistakes, and the generosity to serve others with your strengths. Purpose is not the destination. It is the path itself, walked one mindful step at a time. And the beauty is, you can begin that walk today. In a world that never stops shouting, monks teach us to listen. They show us that peace is not found in silence alone, it is found in choosing what to listen to. That purpose is not a destination waiting to be discovered, it is a way of living, choosing again and again to align our actions with our values. That fulfillment is not about having more, it is about needing less, and giving more of ourselves to what truly matters. Jay Shetty's journey from city life to monkhood and back again is not just inspiring, it is practical. Because his message is not to run away from the world, but to walk through it with clarity, intention, and meaning. So, as we close this journey together, ask yourself, what can I let go of today? What can I practice that brings peace? Who can I serve, starting now? These are not questions for another lifetime. They are the beginning of a new one, yours. Thank you for joining this full-length experience here on Books Arena, where stories become tools for transformation, and books are not just read, they are lived. If this journey gave you a moment of clarity, a spark of peace, or even just a reason to pause and reflect, I invite you to subscribe to Books Arena. Your support allows us to keep bringing deep, soulful books like this to life in a way that resonates and stays with you. Share this with someone who might need a moment of stillness. And remember, the monk mindset is not about perfection, it is about progress, one peaceful breath at a time. Until next time, live well, live fully, and always, start from within. Success often looks mysterious from the outside. We see someone living in a beautiful home, running a thriving business, or traveling the world, and we quietly wonder, what did they do that I am not doing? The truth is rarely a matter of luck or secret connections. Most of the time, it comes down to a set of choices, repeated consistently, that steer a person's life in a particular direction. Imagine life as a long road trip. Some people spend it in the passenger seat, watching the scenery go by, letting others decide when and where to turn. Others grip the steering wheel, study the map, and take full control of the route. The first group often ends up wondering why they arrived somewhere they never wanted to be. The second group may face detours and bad weather, but they keep moving toward a destination they have chosen. Jack Canfield's ideas are not about a single shortcut to success, but about the mindset and habits that allow ordinary people to do extraordinary things. These principles work whether you are a student trying to land your dream job, a parent raising a family, an entrepreneur building a business, or someone simply wanting to feel more alive and fulfilled. They work because they focus on what is within your control: your thoughts, your actions, and your willingness to take responsibility for your future. Think of the people you admire. Strip away their titles, wealth, or fame, and you will often find the same underlying qualities: clarity about what they want, the discipline to keep going when things get hard, and the humility to learn from every experience. They treat their goals not as distant wishes but as inevitable outcomes if they keep showing up, making the right decisions, and adjusting their path when needed. This journey is not about being fearless, it is about being willing. It is about showing up even when your confidence wavers, about taking the small step when the big leap feels overwhelming, and about learning from mistakes without letting them define you. It is about understanding that your circumstances may influence your life, but they do not have to control it. Throughout this journey, we will explore stories of people who started with little more than determination and a vision, and who built lives that not only fulfilled their ambitions but also inspired others. You will see that the core of success is not a one-time event but a series of deliberate, daily choices that compound over time. The road is open, the engine is running, and the steering wheel is in your hands. The question is, where will you choose to go, and what principles will you follow to get there? Part 1, The Power of Taking 100% Responsibility. There is a moment in every person's life when they have to decide whether they will keep blaming the world for where they are, or take full control and own every part of their story. For some, that moment comes after losing a job. For others, it comes when they realize their relationships, health, or finances are not where they want them to be. And for a few, it comes quietly, a sudden, sharp awareness that waiting for someone else to fix things is a dead end. I once heard a story about a young man named Raghav who worked in a modest printing shop. He was always late to work, complained about low pay, and blamed his boss for not recognizing his talent. One rainy afternoon, his bus broke down, and he had to walk the last 3 kilometers to the shop. Soaked and frustrated, he arrived to find the shop closed early due to a power outage. That evening, sitting at a tea stall, he overheard 2 elderly men talking about life. One said, "The day you stop blaming the rain, the bus, the boss, and the city is the day you start building your own road." Something about those words landed deep in Raghav's mind. For the first time, he asked himself, what if I am the reason my life is the way it is? That question is where real change begins. The truth is, taking 100% responsibility means no excuses, no blaming others, and no waiting for luck to save you. If your income is not what you want, if your relationships feel shallow, if your health is suffering, you look in the mirror and accept that you have either created those results or allowed them to happen. This is not about self-punishment, it is about reclaiming your power. Think about a ship's captain. If a storm hits, they cannot blame the sea for being rough. They adjust the sails, change direction, or anchor until it passes. They know the sea will always be unpredictable, the only thing they can control is their own navigation. In life, storms will come, layoffs, betrayals, unexpected expenses, health scares. But when you take full responsibility, you stop wasting energy on the unfairness of the storm and start focusing on what you can do next. Of course, the temptation to blame is strong. It feels comforting to say, I cannot help it, it is because of my parents, or the economy is bad, or I just have bad luck. But that comfort is dangerous. It keeps you stuck, because it shifts the power to change into someone else's hands. The moment you accept that your current reality is a result of your past decisions and that your future will be shaped by the decisions you make today, you unlock the ability to steer your life in any direction. A classic example is Oprah Winfrey. Born into poverty, facing abuse and instability in her childhood, she had every reason to let her circumstances define her. But instead, she took ownership of her education, her mindset, and her opportunities. She sought out mentors, worked relentlessly, and learned from every setback. By refusing to let her early life dictate her destiny, she turned the steering wheel firmly into her own hands. Taking responsibility does not mean you control every event. You cannot control the weather, traffic, or the behavior of others. But you can control how you respond to those things. A missed train can ruin your day, or it can give you an unexpected hour to read, think, or plan. A colleague's criticism can crush you, or it can teach you something valuable about your work. The difference lies in whether you focus on what you cannot change, or on what you can do right now. One powerful practice is to replace the question "who is to blame?" with "what can I do now?" This shift turns every obstacle into a challenge you can work with. Instead of saying, "my boss never promotes me," you might ask, "what skills can I learn, or what opportunities can I create, to make myself too valuable to ignore?" Instead of thinking, "the market is bad," you could ask, "what other income streams can I explore?" When Raghav heard those words at the tea stall, he decided to test this idea. He began arriving at the shop early, offering to take on extra work, and learning graphic design in the evenings. Within a year, he had enough skill and confidence to start freelancing. Within 3 years, he opened his own small design studio. The rain, the bus, and the boss had not changed, but Raghav had, and so had his results. Taking 100% responsibility is not a one-time decision. It is a daily commitment. It means catching yourself when you start to complain and asking, what am I going to do about it? It means recognizing that while you cannot rewrite the past, you can shape the future by the actions you take today. And the most liberating truth? Once you stop waiting for someone else to make your life better, you realize you already have the keys to do it yourself. Part 2, Clarity of Vision and Purpose. Imagine walking into a busy train station. Hundreds of trains are lined up, engines humming, whistles blowing. You buy a ticket, step onto the platform, and then realize you have no idea which train you are supposed to board. The announcements are loud, the crowd is rushing, and the trains keep leaving without you. That is what life feels like without a clear vision. You might be moving, but you are not moving toward anything specific. Clarity of vision is like knowing your exact destination and having the map to get there. Without it, you drift. With it, even obstacles feel like temporary detours rather than dead ends. One of the most striking real-world examples of clarity is Walt Disney. Long before Disneyland existed, Walt carried around detailed sketches of his dream park. He could describe every ride, every color, and even the background music. People thought he was foolish. How could a man with little money and a pile of failures talk about a magical place no one had ever seen? But because his vision was so clear, every decision he made was filtered through one question: will this bring me closer to creating Disneyland? Clarity begins with asking yourself, without fear or modesty, what do I truly want? Not what is expected of you, not what others think is realistic, but what lights you up inside. If you could remove all limits of money, skill, or approval, what would your life look like? Some people resist this question because they do not want to be disappointed. Others confuse busyness with purpose, thinking that if they stay active, they must be making progress. But there is a difference between motion and direction. A hamster runs hard in its wheel, but it never leaves the cage. Clarity removes the will and points you toward the open field. A useful way to find this clarity is to create a vivid mental picture of your ideal future. Close your eyes and imagine a day in your life 5 years from now. Where are you waking up? What does your home look like? Who are you spending time with? What kind of work are you doing? The more detail you add, the more your brain begins to treat this vision as something real, something worth moving toward. I knew a woman named Ananya who always said she wanted to do something creative. That was as far as she could describe it. For years, she took random workshops: pottery, photography, writing, but never committed to any path. Then, one evening, she sat down and wrote a one-page description of her dream life: living in a small hill town, running an art cafe where she could display local artists' work, serve coffee, and host live music. The more she described it, the more she realized this was not just a dream, it was a direction. She began saving money, learning cafe management, and networking with artists. 4 years later, the cafe opened. The vision had moved from her mind to the mountains. Purpose goes hand in hand with vision, but it is slightly different. Vision is what you want, purpose is why you want it. Without a strong why, even the clearest vision can fade. Purpose is what keeps you going when the first burst of excitement is gone and the hard work begins. Take, for example, someone training for a marathon. Their vision might be to cross the finish line in under 4 hours. But their purpose might be deeper, perhaps to prove to themselves that they can overcome past self-doubt, or to inspire their children to chase big goals. That purpose will pull them out of bed on cold mornings when running feels like the last thing they want to do. One common mistake is trying to build a vision based on other people's definitions of success. Maybe your friends dream of corporate promotions, but you want to run a farm. Maybe your family values stability, but you crave travel. Trying to live someone else's vision is like wearing shoes that do not fit. They might look fine, but they will hurt with every step. The beauty of clarity is that it simplifies decision-making. When you know where you are going, every choice becomes easier to evaluate. If an opportunity aligns with your vision, you take it. If it does not, you politely decline, no matter how tempting it looks in the moment. Saying yes to the wrong things is one of the fastest ways to delay your own journey. Clarity also creates momentum. When your vision is vivid, you begin to notice possibilities that you might have ignored before. This is not magic, it is focus. It is like deciding to buy a red car and suddenly seeing red cars everywhere. The cars were always there, but now your attention is tuned to them. The same happens with opportunities. Clarity tunes your attention to what matters most. Remember, clarity does not mean you will never adjust your path. Life changes, and so can your vision. But it is far easier to adjust a moving train than to get one started in the first place. Start with the clearest vision you can create today, and refine it as you grow. When you have both vision and purpose, you are no longer wandering. You are traveling with intent. And when the inevitable challenges arise, you can look at your map and remind yourself, this is where I am going, and this is why it matters. Part 3, Turning Dreams into Action. There is a magical energy in dreams. They stir the imagination, spark late-night conversations, and fill journals with hopeful scribbles. But left alone, dreams are like seeds kept in a box full of potential, but never growing into anything real. To see them bloom, you must take them out, plant them, and tend to them with deliberate action. I once met a young man named Vivek at a workshop. Over tea, he told me about his dream of starting a sustainable clothing brand. He spoke passionately about eco-friendly fabrics, ethical production, and creating jobs for local artisans. I asked him what steps he had taken so far. He paused and said, "I am still waiting for the right time." That was 3 years ago. The last I heard, he was still in the same job, still waiting. Waiting for the right time is one of the most effective ways to kill a dream. Conditions will never be perfect. There will always be bills to pay, skills you have not mastered yet, and fears whispering, what if it fails? The truth is, dreams only begin to take shape when you take the first imperfect step toward them. Think of Thomas Edison working on the electric light bulb. He did not wait until he knew exactly how to make it work. He experimented, failed thousands of times, learned from each attempt, and moved forward again. If he had waited for the perfect plan, we might still be lighting our homes with candles. Turning a dream into action starts with breaking it down into concrete, achievable steps. If your dream is to write a novel, your first step might not be write a bestseller. It might be write 300 words every morning before work. If your dream is to run a marathon, your first step might be run 1 kilometer today. Small, consistent actions build momentum, and momentum is the bridge between vision and reality. Another key is setting specific, measurable goals. A dream is broad, I want to be healthy. A goal is precise, I will walk 10,000 steps 5 days a week for the next 3 months. The more specific you are, the easier it becomes to track progress and stay committed. Action also requires prioritization. You cannot give equal attention to every task and expect results. Decide what matters most today and focus on that. One of the reasons people struggle to turn dreams into reality is that they scatter their energy across too many projects at once. Trying to juggle 5 big dreams often means dropping all of them. Then there is the power of deadlines. Without them, even important goals tend to drift. A deadline creates urgency and forces you to organize your time. If you say, I will learn basic Spanish someday, you might never start. But if you say, I will hold a basic conversation in Spanish within 6 months, you suddenly have a reason to practice daily. There will, of course, be fear. Taking action exposes you to the possibility of failure, and failure can sting. But inaction guarantees a quieter, slower kind of failure, the kind where nothing happens at all. Action, even if imperfect, gives you something to improve upon. Consider the story of Priya, a corporate employee who dreamed of opening a bakery. For years, she collected recipes, watched cooking shows, and told friends about her dream. Finally, she decided to start small, baking on weekends and selling cakes to friends and family. She made mistakes, burned a few batches, and occasionally miscalculated costs. But each order taught her something new. Within 2 years, she had enough customers to quit her job and run her bakery full-time. The bakery did not appear overnight, it grew out of dozens of small, imperfect actions. Accountability can make all the difference. When you share your goals with someone you trust, you create a sense of responsibility. It is easy to break promises to yourself in private, but when others know about your commitment, you feel a push to follow through. This is why workout partners, business mentors, or mastermind groups can be so powerful. One trap to avoid is confusing planning with action. It is possible to spend weeks researching, making lists, and perfecting ideas without ever taking the first real step. Planning is important, but it should be paired with doing. Sometimes the best way to figure out the next step is to start moving and adjust along the way. And here is the thing, action creates clarity. Many people wait for complete certainty before they start, but certainty often comes after you begin. The first step might be clumsy, but it leads to the second, which leads to the third, and soon you are walking toward your dream with more confidence than you thought possible. Every great achievement you can think of, every book written, company built, performance delivered began with someone deciding, today, I will do something to make it real. They did not wait for permission or perfection. They acted, learned, adapted, and kept going. So, if your dream feels far away, ask yourself, what is one small action I can take today that moves me even a centimeter closer? Do that, and then do the next thing, and the next. Step by step, you will find yourself no longer dreaming about the life you want, but living it. Part 4, Belief and the Inner Game. There is a saying that goes, whether you think you can, or you think you cannot, you are right. At first, it sounds like a clever play on words, but the more you live, the more you see its truth. Our actions are often shaped not by our actual abilities, but by what we believe about those abilities. The inner game, the silent conversation we have with ourselves every day, can be the deciding factor between progress and stagnation. Consider the story of Arun, a bright engineering student who wanted to become an entrepreneur. He had the skills, the ideas, and even a small amount of savings. But every time he thought about starting his business, a voice in his head whispered, "You will probably fail. You are not cut out for this. People will laugh at you." These were not the voices of friends or family, they were his own thoughts, shaped by years of self-doubt. For 2 years, those thoughts kept him from even trying. Beliefs are like the soil in which you plant your actions. Rich, nourishing soil produces strong growth. Poor, rocky soil stunts it. A person can have all the resources in the world, but if they are planting seeds in the soil of self-doubt, the results will be weak. On the other hand, someone with limited resources but fertile belief can grow something extraordinary. One striking example is Roger Bannister, the man who, in 1954, ran the first sub-4-minute mile. For decades before that, experts claimed it was physically impossible. Athletes believed it could not be done, and so none of them broke the barrier. Then Bannister did it, and within a year, several other runners did too. The physical ability was always there, it was the belief that unlocked it. The challenge is that many of our beliefs are hidden. They are stories we have repeated to ourselves so often that we mistake them for facts. I am not good with money. I am too old to change careers. People like me do not become leaders. These beliefs may have been formed from a single failure, a careless comment from someone we respected, or a cultural message we absorbed without questioning. Changing these beliefs starts with awareness. Begin by listening to your inner dialogue. How do you speak to yourself when you face a challenge? Do you encourage yourself, or do you immediately predict failure? Do you focus on possibilities, or on reasons something cannot work? Once you notice a limiting belief, you can challenge it. Ask yourself, is this absolutely true? What evidence do I have? And if it is not true, what would I do differently? This does not mean ignoring reality, it means refusing to let assumptions control your actions. Another powerful tool is visualization. Athletes use it constantly. They close their eyes and imagine themselves performing perfectly, hitting the winning shot, making the perfect dive, running the race with flawless form. This mental rehearsal not only builds confidence but also conditions the brain to expect success. Your mind begins to see the outcome as familiar, even before it happens in reality. Surrounding yourself with belief builders is equally important. The people you spend time with can either feed your confidence or drain it. If you are surrounded by constant doubt, negativity, and fear, it is hard to maintain belief in yourself. But if you spend time with people who challenge you, encourage you, and believe in possibilities, their mindset becomes contagious. A key part of the inner game is how you respond to setbacks. Many people see failure as proof that they were not capable in the first place. But the most successful people treat failure as feedback. They ask, what can I learn from this? How can I improve? This keeps their belief intact while sharpening their skills. Think of J.K. Rowling, the author of the Harry Potter series. She faced multiple rejections from publishers, lived on welfare as a single mother, and was told that children's books did not sell well. If she had believed those voices, she would have stopped. Instead, she held on to the belief that her story mattered. That belief carried her through the rejections until she found a publisher and eventually created one of the most successful book series in history. Your inner game is not about pretending challenges do not exist. It is about training your mind to focus on solutions, possibilities, and growth rather than fear and limitation. It is about replacing I cannot with I will find a way. A practical way to strengthen your inner game is to keep a record of your wins, no matter how small. Write them down: times you solved a problem, learned a new skill, or pushed through discomfort. On days when doubt creeps in, reading that list reminds you of your own resourcefulness. Remember, the outer game, your strategies, skills, and actions matters. But it will always be limited by the boundaries you set in your own mind. Strengthen your belief, and you expand what is possible. At the end of the day, success is not just about talent or opportunity. It is about the quiet conviction that you are capable, that your efforts matter, and that you can keep moving forward even when the road gets steep. And that conviction starts with winning the game in your own mind. Part 5, Mastering the Art of Persistence. If there is one trait that separates those who reach their goals from those who give up halfway, it is not talent, intelligence, or luck. It is persistence, the stubborn refusal to quit even when the journey becomes long, uncomfortable, and uncertain. Persistence is not glamorous. It is not the big, exciting leap you see in movies. More often, it is the quiet, repetitive choice to keep going when you are tired, when others have moved on, and when success still feels far away. There is a story about Colonel Harlan Sanders, the man who created Kentucky Fried Chicken. At the age of 65, after his restaurant closed, he was left with little more than a fried chicken recipe and a small monthly pension. Instead of giving up, he packed his car and drove across America, offering his recipe to restaurant owners. He was rejected more than 1,000 times before someone finally said yes. Most people would have stopped after a handful of rejections. Sanders kept going and built a global brand. Persistence is not about ignoring reality. It is about understanding that obstacles are part of the path, not proof that you should turn back. Every worthwhile goal will test your patience and endurance. The road will have stretches where nothing seems to be working. In those moments, persistence becomes your greatest ally. Think of it like climbing a mountain. The view at the top is breathtaking, but most of the climb is spent sweating, stumbling, and pushing through fatigue. You cannot see the summit for most of the journey. You have to trust that it is there and keep putting one foot in front of the other. One of the keys to persistence is having a deep why. If your reason for pursuing a goal is weak, the first big challenge will probably knock you off track. But if your reason is tied to something meaningful, a personal dream, a loved one's future, a cause you believe in, that purpose will keep you moving even when your energy fades. Another key is learning to embrace small progress. Many people quit because they measure success only in big leaps. But in reality, consistent small steps often lead to bigger results than rare bursts of effort. Writing 1 page a day might not seem like much, but it adds up to a book in a year. Saving a little money each week might feel slow, but over time it can transform your finances. Persistence also requires resilience, the ability to recover after setbacks. You will face rejections, delays, and moments of doubt. The difference between those who succeed and those who stop is not that the successful never fail, it is that they get up one more time than they fall. Take the story of Soichiro Honda, the founder of Honda Motor Company. After being turned down for an engineering job at Toyota, he started making scooters in his home. At first, his products did not sell well. But he refined his designs, kept experimenting, and eventually built one of the largest automobile companies in the world. His story shows that persistence is not stubbornly doing the same thing over and over, it is adapting, learning, and trying again. There is also a mental toughness that comes with persistence. It means being willing to be the last one still working when others have left. It means choosing discipline over mood, doing what needs to be done whether you feel like it or not. This is where routines help. If you create habits that keep you moving forward, you will not have to rely solely on bursts of motivation, which come and go. Of course, persistence is not blind. There is a difference between quitting too soon and wisely changing direction. Sometimes the goal stays the same but the method changes. If a particular approach is not working, persistence means trying another route rather than abandoning the journey altogether. In my own observation, persistent people often have one more advantage: they do not see the word no as final. They treat it as not yet. When they hear no, they refine their pitch, improve their skills, or find another door to knock on. The truth is, many people stop right before they would have succeeded. The last mile is often the hardest, precisely because you have already invested so much effort without seeing the full reward. But if you can push through that last stretch, you often find that the breakthrough was closer than you imagined. So, persistence is not about never feeling discouraged, it is about deciding that discouragement will not dictate your choices. It is about showing up again and again, even when progress is invisible. And when you look back years later, you will see that persistence was not just a habit, it was the bridge that carried you from where you started to where you wanted to be. Part 6. Building a supportive environment. No one truly succeeds alone. Even the most determined individual needs a network of support, encouragement, and accountability. The environment you place yourself in, the people you interact with, the habits you form, the spaces you occupy can either accelerate your progress or slowly drain it away. Picture two gardens. One is surrounded by rich soil, steady sunlight, and regular watering. The other is choked by weeds, shaded from the sun, and left dry. The seeds planted in both gardens may be identical, but their growth will be radically different. In the same way, your ideas, energy, and ambitions will either flourish or wither depending on the environment you create for them. Consider the story of a young musician named Lila. She was talented but hesitant. She played the guitar in her bedroom, rarely letting anyone hear her songs. One day, she joined a local songwriter group where people met weekly to share their music. The group was supportive, giving her feedback and celebrating her progress. Over time, her confidence grew. Within a year, she was performing on small stages and recording her first album. It was not that her skill changed overnight, it was that her environment shifted from isolation to encouragement. One of the simplest ways to build a supportive environment is to surround yourself with people who believe in growth. These are individuals who inspire you, challenge you, and hold you accountable. They are not necessarily the ones who always agree with you, but they respect your goals and push you to keep moving forward. On the other hand, there are environments filled with constant negativity, people who dismiss dreams, focus on problems rather than solutions, or secretly resent your progress. Spending too much time in such a space can erode even the strongest motivation. This is not about cutting people out of your life without thought, but about choosing where you spend the bulk of your emotional energy. Physical environment matters too. The spaces where you work, rest, and create should be set up to help you focus and feel energized. A cluttered desk, noisy background, or constant stream of distractions can slow you down without you even realizing it. Small changes like organizing your workspace, setting boundaries on interruptions, or designating a specific time for deep work can make a big difference in your productivity. Routines and systems are another part of a supportive environment. When you build habits that make it easier to act than to procrastinate, you are setting yourself up for consistent progress. For example, laying out your workout clothes the night before makes it more likely you will exercise in the morning. Keeping a daily checklist helps you focus on priorities instead of reacting to whatever comes up. Support also comes in the form of mentorship. A good mentor does more than give advice, they help you see possibilities you might have missed and warn you about mistakes before you make them. Mentors can be found in your field, in your community, or even in books and recorded talks. The key is to seek guidance from those whose values and achievements align with the kind of life you want to create. Accountability partners can be equally powerful. When someone else knows your goals and checks in on your progress, you are less likely to let excuses take over. It is one thing to break a promise to yourself, it is another to admit to a trusted friend that you did not follow through. Building a supportive environment also means being willing to ask for help. Many people struggle with this, believing they have to do everything on their own to prove their strength. But asking for help is not weakness, it is a recognition that others' strengths can complement your own. There is a famous African proverb, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. Success is rarely a solo sprint, it is a long-distance journey. The people who walk beside you can make the difference between burning out and breaking through. Of course, creating such an environment takes intention. You may have to seek out new circles, join groups that align with your interests, or step away from settings that keep you stuck. It might feel uncomfortable at first, especially if you are leaving behind familiar but limiting influences. Yet, every change you make to strengthen your surroundings will pay back in greater clarity, energy, and momentum. In the end, a supportive environment is not just about comfort, it is about growth. It should challenge you as much as it encourages you. It should help you stay focused when distractions come, remind you of your why when your energy fades, and celebrate with you when the results arrive. When you choose to plant yourself in an environment that nurtures your best self, you are not only making it easier to reach your goals, you are making it harder to give up on them. Part 7, Creating a Life of Contribution and Fulfillment. There comes a point when personal success, the goals achieved, the challenges overcome, the milestones reached no longer feels like the finish line. Instead, it becomes the foundation for something greater, the opportunity to make a meaningful difference in the lives of others. True fulfillment rarely comes from achievement alone. It comes from contribution, from knowing that your efforts ripple outward beyond yourself. You might see it in a teacher who spends extra hours helping a struggling student, in a business owner who mentors young entrepreneurs, or in a volunteer who shows up week after week to serve their community. These people may have different lives and resources, but they share one thing in common: they use what they have gained to help others grow. Consider the story of Andrew Carnegie, one of the wealthiest men of his time. After building his fortune in the steel industry, Carnegie devoted the latter part of his life to giving it away. He funded thousands of public libraries, established universities, and supported countless cultural institutions. His belief was simple: wealth, whether of money, knowledge, or influence, carries a responsibility to be shared for the benefit of society. Contribution does not always have to be grand or public. Sometimes it is found in the quiet ways you support those around you. A parent raising their children with patience and love, a friend listening without judgment, a colleague sharing their expertise to help a teammate succeed. These acts may never make headlines, but they create a lasting impact in the lives they touch. One of the most rewarding aspects of contribution is that it often deepens your own sense of purpose. When your work is tied to something bigger than personal gain, challenges become easier to bear. You are no longer running solely for your own finish line, you are helping others reach theirs too. Contribution also has a way of multiplying. The person you help today may go on to help someone else tomorrow, creating a chain reaction of positive change. A single conversation, a piece of advice, or an opportunity you offer could alter the course of someone's life, and you may never even know the full extent of its effect. Of course, contribution is not limited to money or material resources. Your time, skills, and attention are often the most valuable gifts you can give. In an age where many feel unseen and unheard, the act of showing up for someone with genuine care can be transformative. Fulfillment, on the other hand, is deeply personal. It comes from living in alignment with your values, from using your strengths in ways that matter to you, and from knowing that your days are spent on things that feel meaningful. It is possible to have success without fulfillment, to reach your goals but feel an emptiness where purpose should be. That is why the journey to true success is incomplete without the search for fulfillment. One way to find it is to regularly ask yourself, if I had all the money, time, and freedom in the world, how would I spend my days? The answers often reveal what matters most to you. It might be creating, teaching, healing, building, or exploring. Whatever it is, weaving those elements into your life, even in small ways, brings a deeper sense of satisfaction. Another path to fulfillment is gratitude. It is easy to become so focused on what is next that you overlook what is already here. Pausing to acknowledge the people, opportunities, and experiences you have can shift your perspective from scarcity to abundance. Gratitude does not mean settling, it means appreciating the journey while still reaching for more. In the end, contribution and fulfillment are closely linked. One feeds the other. The more you give in ways that align with who you are, the more fulfilled you feel, and the more fulfilled you feel, the more you have to give. When you look back at your life years from now, the achievements you remember most fondly may not be the ones that brought you the most recognition, but the ones that allowed you to make a difference. Your legacy will not be measured solely by what you earned or built, but by the lives you touched along the way. Success, in its truest form, is not just about getting ahead. It is about lifting others as you climb, leaving the world better than you found it, and knowing that your time here mattered. That is the kind of success that lasts long after the applause fades. Success is often imagined as a straight line, a clear path from where you are to where you want to be. But as we have seen, it is far more like a winding journey, filled with turns, obstacles, and unexpected detours. The difference between those who arrive and those who stop halfway lies in a combination of vision, action, persistence, and the willingness to grow. You have the ability to shape your life, not through rare bursts of brilliance, but through the steady, daily choices that align with your deepest values. By taking 100% responsibility, defining a clear vision, building habits that sustain you, and surrounding yourself with people who lift you higher, you create the conditions for long-term success. Yet, The journey is not just about reaching personal goals. It is about using your growth to contribute to others, leaving behind a legacy of kindness, encouragement, and impact. The truth is, success is not something you chase, it is something you create through who you become. And as you keep moving forward, step by step, you will find that the real reward is not just in what you achieve, but in the life you build along the way.